Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. We're starting a couple minutes late. We'll expect some other members to come in here shortly. And just want to, again, tell you thank you for giving this committee the attention that we asked for and going through some important business for the citizens of the state of Alabama. Through your input and answers to the questions that may be posed to you today, I think it'll be a good process, and we'll be able to try to work through what, separate fact from fiction and what's gone maybe wrong, could be done better, and applaud you for the great things that you have done. So with that, Holly, if you'll call the roll.
Senator Coleman Madison.
She's here.
Senator Gavan. Senator Gudger. Senator Kelly. Representative Pringle. Representative Rafferty. Representative Shedd. Representative Simpson. Representative Underwood. Representative Wilcox. And Senator Barfoot.
Here. All right. Thank you. First on the agenda today is the Board of Examiners of Assisted Living Administrators. And is there somebody here that would like to come up and speak to that? Ms. Austin, if you will, and members in the audience, if you will, make sure you introduce yourself to everybody when you come up for us, okay?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Claire Austin of the Austin Group with the Board of Assisted Living Administrators. I have numerous board members with me. My legal counsel is here, Jim Sasser. To the right of Jim Sasser is Jill Benefield, who's on the board as administrator. She's from Madison County. To the right of her is Michelle Kelly, who's a constituent of yours from Pike Road.
All right, Ms. Kelly.
If you look to my right, Rebecca, if you'll raise your hand, she is my new current chairman of the board. She's originally from Chilton County, but works at Oak Grove here in Montgomery. To the right of her is a consumer member, which is Sue Jackson from Montgomery. And to the other right is Miss Sally Sasser Williams, who is another constituent of yours, and she is our nursing home appointee. And behind Sally is Miss Jimmy Ann Campbell, who is also a consumer member of our board. We have one, Sandy Bracken, who is her brother's in the legislature, and she is sick with COVID. And then Dr. David Herrick had an emergency, and he could not be here this morning.
Okay. Ms. Austin, did you have an opportunity yesterday to listen to some of the questions, comments, concerns that the board had and review what the Department of Examiners of Public Accounts had in their report?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you want to address that? And certainly members at any point in time, if y'all want to chime in and ask questions along the way, feel free to.
Okay. I guess as I started tacking them, one thing was the emergency contracts. Also, Sue, if if you have any question of her, Sue Jackson, if she'll raise her hand, she was my chairman during that time. She's the one that called me on a Saturday, and I met with her on a Sunday on this emergency contract, and I had told you all that what happened in the situation where that former executive director had forged false information on exams about people passing. So the AG's office called her. She came in with me, and there has been just one emergency contract after another. And they waited until the legislator, Mr. Jones, continued to wanted to do emergency contracts. He had told our board chair to continue these contracts, and then we were waiting on a template from the new purchasing director, Miss Christine Cook, in which we got that, and an RFP, which Mr. Sasser has worked with the purchasing director's office on this, and there has been an RFP awarded, and that will be in the contract review committee for next month. That is one. Okay, the another thing I wanted to mention was the dementia training. It is a training that is mandatory for every assisted living applicant. And Rebecca Dennis, who is now the current chair, was not on the board during the time she has done this training, used to do it for the association and did it for us. Will, do you have those documents? We had this whole issue with Alabama buys, and there was a problem with getting them. Okay. Y'all discussed both of those issues. We have letters from February 4th, 2022, and that was where we had Tammy, who was doing the review course, and we also had Rebecca Dennis, and there was an issue with Alabama buys, and so they asked us to put this in the system. Would you like for me to give these to you?
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
Okay.
You have enough copies for everybody, or?
Do you have any further information on that you want to talk about? Okay. Okay, and then as far as the complaint that happened in 2019 that we discussed in Montgomery, Alabama, obviously that was under previous direction administration. The only two people on my board now and then are Jimmy Ann Campbell and Sue Jackson that are both consumer members. And just for the procedure, how it works, this board does not do any investigations. The Alabama Department of Public Health does that. Their assisted living does. So they go and do the investigation, and then they report back investigative problems and issues to us, which I assume that they did that. I just can only say that I assume that the executive director did not do anything about that, and I assume that the legal counsel didn't make a decision to do anything about that either. But it was very serious, and it should have been handled in a total different matter, but nobody was here except for those two ladies. And if there's somebody that wants to ask them something about that, they can. But once again, they both live in Montgomery, and they, like myself, heard all this on WSFA. Okay. And the stuff at Archives, the Annual Act, the RDA, that in 2019 was before we were here. In 2022, I talked with Dixie and them, and that was just an oversight on our part, and we will get that taken care of here this week. Okay. I think that's most of the items.
Members, questions, comments? Senator Cole Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Claire, I just want to know, what are you all doing moving forward to try to ensure that, these types of discrepancies don't happen, or working with staff here or whatever, but what type of policies, if any, are you putting in place or recommending that you put in place?
You regarding investigations?
Yes.
Okay. When there's a complaint that comes into my office, I immediately call my legal counsel, Mr. Sasser. We have an investigative committee made up of 4 different members, and sometimes it will rotate, because if it's somebody in Montgomery, I don't want somebody in Montgomery handling something. If it's something up in Madison, Alabama, I don't want Miss Benefield, because she may know them. And then we have a committee meeting. The names are marked out. Nobody knows the name of that individual. We look at that. We talk to the person that complains, and then we'll eventually send a letter to the administrator, because the only person they would be complaining about is an administrator, okay? That's one complaint. The second arm of this is Alabama Department of Public Health. They will normally send over, once they go into, like for an example, there was something down in Mobile County about 2 years ago. They sent over a complaint and a file about 75 pages. We got together our committee, and I called that administrator, and we told them we would be pulling their license. We have a 30-day period. We come back. I called the lady and said, I just want you to know you can come before the board and speak if you like. She says, no, I didn't answer your letter. I'm turning in my license. So there's the complaint that comes into us, and then there's the ones that come in for Alabama Department of Public Health. And we work closely with our lawyer, and then whoever the 2 individuals we put on our committee.
Members? Representative Shedd.
Thank you. Of all the boards, agencies, and commissions that we as a committee look at, this one is the most important, and any others that deal with children. Us adults in between, we can kind of fight for ourselves when we have problems, but I worked in senior services at the local level and retired from that profession and enjoyed it. A very rewarding work, and as I'm sure everybody is in this profession here. But this is very, very important, and I know you know that, and I know that you take it seriously in the board. And I want to thank you, board, for your work to try to take care of everybody that's in the assisted livings across the state. But board members, this is serious because it involves people a lot of people that don't even have family. You know, that this is the only family they have is at that point. I know from my work in the past. I think I think and hope that that you are in your firm you're moving in the right direction.
Yes.
But this is probably, I think, the most significant issues I've seen, and I've been on this board since I think 13. And I know a lot of those happened before you took over, so it's tough taking over a bad situation and making it better. So I understand that and commend you for your work on it. But I guess my message and all that is, it's serious. We've got to make sure that these people are protected because they can't many of them can't fend for themselves. I might have some more questions, but I'll have to take a break.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And I will tell you, each one of these board members, particularly all these administrators, you know, I came in during COVID, and these ladies and these men in these facilities, y'all, they've worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, around the clock. I mean, any healthcare worker, whether it's hospital, nursing home, or assisted living facility, you know, my hats go off. I'm blessed because I tell you what, they are a tremendous board. They're a great group of ladies to work with. We certainly had to do a lot of emergency meetings and a lot of things that took place the first 6 or 7 months I took this board over because there were so many things that had gone in the tank and so many things that were left undone. But I couldn't ask for a better group of people on this board, and they are kudos for the work that they all do in the facilities and taking care of these individuals across the state. And I also think Mr. Simpson's not here, but we have a good group geographically all across the state on our board.
But now I think you have 4 from the same county, Ron, right?
Well, one person is leaving today, and another lady, Miss.
And I love everybody that's on the board, and
Yeah.
I love every county in the state, even though I only represent 2. But I'm just saying.
There's a lady that is rolling off today. She's not here. She is from Montgomery County, and there's a lady from Cullman County, Brandy Brock, that's taken over that spot today. So that takes one less person from Montgomery County. And Miss Jimmy Ann and Sue Jackson, both consumers, their terms have expired, and their replacements, 3 names, were submitted to the governor's office in May of 2022 to replace those 2 individuals. So unfortunately, I will probably be losing Sue and Jimmy Ann as my consumers, I imagine, in the next month or 2.
One more.
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Does anyone else other than the health department do any inspections with assisted living facilities? I can't remember. That's the only one?
No, sir. And that is a very small division, and they've had a lot of changeover and turmoil. I believe they had, is it 2 inspectors, y'all? They only have 2 inspectors currently in their entire state of Alabama going out and doing inspections. They have somebody in South Alabama and somebody in North Alabama that do their inspections, and they're very, very busy.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I used to have a company that did non-emergency medical, so I do also worked quite closely with assisted living facilities, and I second what Representative Shedd said. And I also, even though I do want to see more representation from the Mobile area on your board, I want to thank the board for your time and coming to represent. I know this is important work, and I know it takes away from your facility, but it's very important for us to get more information about what's going on with your board, and I want to just take this moment to thank y'all for being here.
Sure. Y'all just jump right in.
Okay, I do have one, because this was the crux of our conversation yesterday, and we spent a lot of time on it. And I don't know if you want to address it, but the board, and maybe they can just kind of clarify just a little bit about the extensions of the contracts and everything, you know, which emergency contract that got to be seemingly the normal.
Right.
So if someone could just kind of briefly, like I said yesterday, I know that there's more to it. You all are one entity. You're dealing with Secretary of State's office. You're dealing with our staff here, and you're dealing with others outside in the governor's office as far as appointments and things like that. And everybody doesn't meet at the same time. It's not like, okay, we got this, and then of course our contract review, what have you. So all of these entities don't meet at the same time, and timelines don't really mesh. But I do think it bears clarification, because we do have another board that's going to come up with similar. And maybe this is the same scenario, but I would like for somebody to kind of explain that, please.
Yes, ma'am. I did allude to that earlier on, and I may invite Sue Jackson up here. But when this contract started, Michael Jones was the purchasing director, and Sue met with him that August or September, and he continued each time to ask her when she called him after the first one was a 6-month, then it went to a year, and then it kept going on. She dealt with Michael Jones on that, and he did not. It was during COVID, first of all. That was one thing. And then there were some other outside circumstances too, some legal outside circumstances that were going on in the state that precluded some RFPs from being issued. And that's what he told them to do. And with Miss Christine Cook was named the new purchasing director. We met with her and told her we had been on emergency contracts with this particular board and the next board that you were discussing. And she said, we're working on what they call a template for a new RFP, because as we know, the legislator passed legislation dealing with purchasing and all of that, and added a lot of new entities to that. And we waited probably about 3 months for that before we got the sign off on the RFP. And then Mr. Sasser worked with Christine Cook's office and the legal office to bring that up. Sue, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, you said it perfectly. That's exactly what happened.
I want to thank you just for clarifying, because, as I said yesterday, it seems like something is not quite right. But again, I'm only looking at half of the glass is half full, because I don't have all the information here. I take this committee seriously, because while we pass all these laws and we understand that these are the boards that really cause the operation of the entire state. If you've got any kind of license, it's going to come before this committee. There's a trust factor that's here between the legislative body and the people who serve on these boards, as well as the administrators. And certainly the Board of Assisted Living and administrators is a very important role. Who knows, we may end up being there ourselves, subject to our own rules and regulations here. But they're all important. And so I don't take this lightly, and I just hope that the people who serve on the board, we want to thank you for your service, because I know oftentimes people have an assumption about all the power that you have, and, you're getting paid all these great salaries, and a lot of people serve at their own, time and expenses and everything. But I want to thank you all really for this. I think we need to try to do everything that we can to all, if we can, get on one accord or one page to help facilitate, to make things better. Again, this is the operation and the business of the state and people's livelihoods, and certainly life and death of loved ones. So I just want to thank you all. I know it's not an easy job, but thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. And trust me, I can assure you as a vendor, having 3 and 4 and 5 emergency contracts is not what I want. I would have loved to have had an RFP after the first year and moved on down the road. I can assure you of that.
Remind me where the reappointments are. They're at the governor's office, or are they at the Senate for confirmation?
None of these are Senate confirmed. We have 2 openings currently for consumers, and there has been a letter that was mailed to them in May of 2022. And just for clarification, as a matter of fact, we used to have an individual who just rolled off our board a year and a half ago, Roger Cooper, who was from Mobile, who served on the board for how many years? Roger Cooper from Mobile served on this board for 8 years from Mobile. He just went off like a year and a half ago.
Okay, that's good to know. But then clarify for me, they've been appointed by the governor, but they're waiting Senate confirmation?
No, they're just sitting in the governor's hopper. I mean, you know,
Okay.
I just know she had an election year and she's been, I know last Friday she rolled out some, the time before she rolled out some. We
I know,
did
we're just trying to figure out.
Right.
I'm not casting blame, and I don't care why. I'm just trying to figure out where they are in the process. Thank you.
they're pending there in her office.
So they're there by name?
What
Not
we
just
did, so there's
opening.
2 consumer spots,
Yeah.
and so there were 3 names submitted for
Right.
each one of those. So they've got 3 names to replace Miss Jackson, and they have 3 names to replace Jimmy Ann Campbell.
That's good. I think that makes it easier for everybody to keep it moving. So thank you for that.
Certainly.
Just 2 quick comments, if I could. One, you know, I'd mentioned sustainability on this particular financials from yesterday when we were just going over the, you know, like the work session. But I do know that you had like an $18,000 expense to affiliated marketing, and I'm sure that's not an annual thing. So I get that. That gets you a lot closer to the zero number, you know, break even. But what I'll say multiple times today is your unobligated cash balance is not a large one. So, you know, it's not because of the dollar amount in it. But I do think it would be wise for all of us to say, when those balances are at any amount, here's our plan for them. We'll hold them till they get to a certain number, and then at that point, we will do what? We'll either, you know, you may say we're going to buy a building, we're going to invest in the education of people who come up in this particular field or industry, just to have a plan so that we can say it's not just going to sit there for who knows how long, kind of a thing. So if y'all could just say, you know, long term, here's our plan. You know, if it never gets above a certain amount, then that's okay. But just to know that there's been some consideration put into it. That's all.
Thank you. I know you mentioned that on numerous boards, and matter of fact, we have a board meeting today. I will discuss that with them. And that the $18,000, when we first took over this board, every person that had to renew their license, Claire and staff had to personally type in their credit card numbers and personally do it, because the former executive director, because people's Social Security numbers are in our database, and you know, like you do 418-78 and whatever. Well, in the database, you're not supposed to do their hyphens, and they put hyphens in the database, so it messed it up. So nobody could go online and renew their license. And we renew every month throughout the entire year. Okay, so it's not like somebody renews their license once a month, because we do training and testing, right? As I mentioned y'all yesterday, we've got 21 people in training this week, and they will test, and hopefully we'll have 20 new administrators, whether they're Cat 1s or Cat 2s. But that took a lot of manpower.
What year was that?
That was in September and August of 20, and we did that for a solid year.
Makes sense.
Was not able to bid that out and get that computer company, software company to help us. Yeah. That was that May of 22, y'all? Yeah, May of 22. So that's right, because it's only been a solid year where I can say, okay, Mary Ann, you have to go on the website, put in your password, log in, you upload your CEUs, your continuing education, and you can pay online. Now, if they don't want to pay online, they can mail it in to us.
Yeah, and so that's what that investment was for, and that's
yes,
why
sir.
I wasn't questioning the investment at all, just looking at big picture stuff.
Right,
So.
I just wanted you to know that,
Sure.
but I will mention that today at the meeting for sure.
Great, thank you, ma'am.
I almost forgot. I mentioned yesterday that I'd like to see the new measures that's in place on significant item number 4, significant issue number 4, regarding complaints being handled properly. The real serious one.
Yes, sir.
And if you can email me that, or the board, or Holly, whoever you need to, but I'd like to see those, please.
Certainly, we will get that to you.
Let me add to that. So on that significant issue number 4, I think that was that documentation wasn't able to be verified, that the documentation was sent to a Department of Public Health. Not that it wasn't sent, but there's just no documentation to verify that. Do you know off the top of your head whether or not that was actually done?
Which particular year was that? Was that, if it was the 2019, I could not find anything in my files on the 2019 case. I knew about it, but I couldn't find it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm thinking that was significant issue number 4. I was kind of more related to significant issue number 5, where complaint records didn't contain documentation that the complainants were notified of the resolution of their complaint, and looks like they were supposed to be forwarded to the Department of Public Health.
Okay.
It was,
I thought about that this morning. What we do is there are 2 people at the Alabama Department of Public Health, and matter of fact, they pretty much email. We probably email each other 4 times a week because they'll email me. They won't call me. And they'll say, "Can you tell me if Holly is a licensed 2 cat administrator? She's going here." And they'll send me 4 or 5. Like next week when we have 20-something people that come in, we just do a lot electronically, and then they'll say, "Okay, we've got a big report that's coming. We'll deliver that to you." But we will certainly make better on our end about reporting back to them if there's. Like I said, they come in 2 ways if a consumer complains to us, and then the other one is if an investigation is done by EDPA. So that's how we kind of dovetail with each other on this.
and I guess my point on that is, I don't know if you know specifically which one of those complaints or what those complaints were, but to the extent that you have some computer-generated information that shows that you actually did forward that to the Department of Public Health, if you could provide that to us and to the Department of Examiners, I think wouldn't have been a significant issue if you'd have been able to provide that. So it may be that you can't find it internally, but you need to reach out to the public health to say, "Hey, can you give us copies of what we had sent to you?" And that may satisfy that.
Okay.
And then my next statement is towards you or the board, but it is also a broader topic that I hope all the boards, agencies, and commissions will hear. To me, there are 3 different categories when it comes to significant findings, and that is, the deliberate, flagrant violations of what the law is. Number 2, what I'll call is not dotting I's and crossing the T's, and not to mean that those are insignificant findings, but lesser egregious issues that are out there. And then the third is on prior significant issues or prior findings and what has been done or not done to remedy those. And certainly from my standpoint, all 3 are important. I think maybe I'm speaking for the board. All 3 are important to the board as well. But, I hope that everybody will hear that in my mind, those prior significant findings or issues, if they haven't been resolved, why haven't they been resolved? And that'll be a continued question that I'll be asking today and going forward. And so could you address what has been done, if anything, on any of the prior findings, number 1, and then number 2, on the new significant issue about the $45 exam fee, there was another board, agency, or commission that we spent a pretty good amount of time on that was doing similar things, charging fees when they're not authorized by statute. So if you could address the prior significant findings, what's been done, and then that one issue.
Okay, I'm going to start with the 45. I did mention that to y'all yesterday. After the year of COVID, there used to be only one education entity, which was the association. And then after that, on the training, because it was not totaling the total hours it should have totaled, we brought in Miss Tammy Bowman to also teach the review class. The board started charging the $45 once we had the Board of Examiners come in and note that to us. The board quit charging that immediately this past spring. The board has met and voted to do that. Mr. Sasser, the attorney back here, has written that up, and we'll be getting that in the monthly administrative law to be able to charge that $45 for that.
Do you know, and I'm not suggesting you know the exact amount off the top of your head, but what the total amount of charges for those fees were? I mean, for those examination fees, we talking $300? We talking $30,000?
I would say more in the line of maybe $600-700.
Yeah.
Because it was only done for about a year and a half.
Right.
So it definitely, we'll say definitely under $2,000.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. And
because they had options. They could take it at this location or this location.
All right, and then the prior significant findings, what, if anything, have y'all done to try to remedy those or?
Dixie, is that something you can tell me which ones?
The prior significant findings were regarding the Records Disposition Authority. They're on page 11 of your report if you have it. And then the second one is regarding the vacancies with the Secretary of State.
Okay. You're right. I mentioned the RDA, and when I discussed that, that was in 2019 before we took over, and we did it in 2020, and we did it in 2021, and it was just simply an oversight in 2022. And I can assure you, it's top on our list. That will not be occurring again. And then the vacancies have been, we have been posting those on the Secretary of State's website. That has been corrected too. But anything prior to September of 20, I didn't have any oversight or was not there at the board. But those are all taken, those two are taken care of.
Okay.
Ms. Austin, did you say that you're establishing a fee through the attorney or from the policy on the board? Is that what I heard you say a second ago? I'm sorry. I was talking over here.
Right. The $45 fee. Mr. Sasser, would you like to discuss this? Because we shouldn't have been charging that fee. We can charge fees, but it had not been voted on and it's not been in our.
The reason I'm bringing this up on page 9, I'm just reading the bottom, but the legislature hadn't established such as significantly definite policy, rule, or standard. Administration agency may not be empowered to deal with such issuing of license or permits or establishing a fee. So if we haven't been able to establish that for you, I don't think you can establish that fee, is what I'm saying, even if we have got your board approval on that. So I just want to make sure that if the legislature hasn't given it to you, we'll have to look at legislation to do that if this board so deems fit. So can we talk to Mr. Sasser about that?
That's right. You want to talk to him now or later?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Senator Geiger, it's not a fee. It's basically a charge for a service rendered, it's a training service rendered to the applicant or the potential applicant.
So it's an applicant fee?
It's not an applicant fee. No, it's training. In other words, they're paying for a training they have to have.
No, that's the fee of $45 is not mandatory. They don't have to take the review class, and there's two options of where they can take it, but it's not mandatory for them to take a review class.
It's just it's a service offered for a potential applicant, and it's a charge. It's not a fee. If you want to take this review course, it's going to cost you $45. If you choose this one, it's just like maybe if we're lawyers that we take a bar breeder review course for the Bar Association, we may take another one, maybe cheaper. And so it's a charge for a service rather than a fee. I mean, maybe semantics maybe a little. I hope that I've clarified that. It's not in other words, it's not mandatory at all.
Well, if it did become mandatory, your board thought it would be anyway, and whether or not the licensees are paying that $45 one way or the other. But we go back to Representative Underwood's as far as unobligated money that's left over at the end of the year. That might be something you could think about putting towards that in your plan as we go forward.
I have one question. Is this the charge of the fee or how you refer to it? Is this to cover the cost for the facilitator, maybe materials for the workshop and things like this? I know Board of Realtors had the same thing. They have.
Yes, Tammy Bowman is paid $500 to teach this class, which is a 4.5-hour class on Tuesdays, only when we have Section A, because they have to come in for a Section A training, then they come in, and that's only 2.5 days. Then they come back the following month for 4 days and testing for 5 days. And it is voluntarily. They do not have to take this, okay? Because it's basically all on the rules and regulations, whether you're a Cat 1 or Cat 2, which is about 125 pages of rules
That's
and
basically
regulations.
professional improvements if somebody wants to invest in themselves, but you've got to recoup the cost so it's not passed on to the agency.
Right,
As a
and
new
that, once
volunteer.
again, the association does the same class. They can take it from the association or they can take it from the board from Tammy. So that's just a decision that each of them make. I guess I would say since I've been there for 3 years, I think I've had about 5 people who didn't take it at all. But what I will tell you, those 5 people failed the test.
Just looking at it from the outside, I'm a business owner. I'm going to have to get a license from the state. So you've got the contract to be the executive director for the Austin Group LLC. Not only do you, paying the bills and doing that, and then, writing the check for the amount $6,000 a month for you, but you're having to keep up with all that. As a business owner, having to get that license, if I'm paying you that much money to do that job, I know you inherited this process. We talked about it yesterday, and I appreciate the comments before this meeting. But you've got 8 significant findings. You've got 1 prior. All I'm going to say is, I'm not going to dig into these this time, but on the next go around, we expect you to make sure that these are have attention to each and every one of these, just like the chairman said earlier. And as we go forward and this comes back around, hope maybe even next year, it depends on what the board decides. We want these significant issues to obviously start minimizing and start handling each and every one of these. Some of them have already been handled, some of them haven't. And just like the $45 fee, we're splitting hairs on, they're still paying $45. I don't care if you call it a fee or not. The question is, do you have authority through the legislature to be able to do that? But there's certain things that over the year, I'd love for you to come back and say, okay, let's go back and pull this book because it's going to be right next to my desk and I'm going to be watching. That's all I'm saying. I just feel like we need to do that for all the licensees in this state, for each and every one of these as we go forward.
Thank you. I agree with you. And like I said, several, some of those, the ones you've talked about, the significant findings on bill paying and all that, we've already stopped that, doing it at the end of the month. Once that was brought to our attention, like I said, it had never been done that way before, but we're certainly looking at everyone, and we'll certainly have our ducks in a row and be in line with what any of these significant issues. I can assure you of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, court reporting. Good
morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Victor Biebighauser. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Court Reporting, and we had an opportunity to visit yesterday and appreciate your time and the examiners in reviewing our agency. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce our 3 board members that are here today. Perry Ann Tidwell is our chair, and she is an official reporter in Madison County. And it's Perry Ann. And then next to her is Mary King. Mary is a official reporter here in Montgomery County and is the secretary of our board. And finally, Judge Claude Hunley from Madison County Circuit Court is our judge member of the board. We also have our legal counsel, Mark Wilkerson, present as well. So I think the examiners went over their report yesterday, and then, I came up to clarify a few things for you. We don't have any significant deficiencies, or as far as I can tell, any deficiencies to address, but we're here, and, we serve at the pleasure of the legislature and the people of Alabama. So, if there are any questions whatsoever about what we're doing, whether it's in the examiner's report or not, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
I would invite either Judge Hunley or Ms. Tidwell, if they are of the opinion that we do need to do something about these digital recordings, to get in touch with me, because that's something I'm interested in. Best I can tell, we can't put artificial intelligence in jail, but we can put a person in jail. So.
Thank you. Welcome that invitation. Thank you, Mr. Gouveia.
That's a very sensitive subject. And the board is very sensitive to that. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the unused funds, I think we talked about this yesterday with Representative Underwood, our local CPA / bookkeeper / for the legislature, it sounds like, / investigator, I like him. But any funds remaining in the fund at the end of the fiscal year, you give that back into education and training for your court reporters. I love that plan. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir.
It makes us feel a lot easier on this side. That is the people's money that's paying that money in. You're giving it back to them, and we appreciate that.
Well, and you'll notice, sir, thank you for that. You'll notice that our expenses are running typically less than $90,000 a year, and our revenues are less than $90,000 a year, and our expenses are even less than that. So we're routinely running, a surplus, if you will.
It's like you've ran a college before, or a university or something.
Yes, sir. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It might be because Ms. King's on the board too, so.
Just for curiosity, how long have you been in this position?
I came in originally in November of 2020 under 1-year emergency administrative services contract, and then I converted to a part-time state employee at the conclusion of that contract. So it's been not quite 3 years.
Just to commend you, it's refreshing to see efficiency and giving back. As Senator Gudger has said, this is something that we need to try to encourage other boards to do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. We're a small board, so we don't have the need for lots of staff and lots of processes that other boards may have. But we do think we run an efficient operation for what we're trying to do, and our purposes are to serve the people of Alabama, the legal profession, and also the interests of our professional court reporters.
Members?
Maybe small but vital, right?
I think it's certainly vital to our legal system. Yes, sir.
Correct. That's correct. And so, just so folks won't think that I haven't seen a financial that I don't like, you're right. Your numbers are conservative on the revenue side, but they're also on the expense side. You've controlled where you're at with how you spend your money, and then like we mentioned in here and Garland said a while ago, that's the day-to-day, the year-to-year stuff, and even at the end of that, you've got to plan for the excess. And I commend everything about these, and I thank y'all for doing it how you do it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And we have a very committed board. And they're very interested in their profession and are interested in the well-being of the court reporting profession in the state. Thank you.
And on that note, I just want to take the time to thank the board for coming here. It means a lot to our committee to have the board here to answer. Should your executive director not be able to have recall, it's good to have backup. So thank y'all for taking the time out of your schedule and being here.
I call some of them all the time, I can assure you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, good. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, members.
All right, up next, Board of Cosmetology and Barbering. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jeannie Price. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Cosmetology and Barbering. I'm in my 4th year as the Executive Director at the board. Our board currently licenses 30,000 individual licensees as well as 6,000 to 7,000 shop establishments. Our board member is a 7-member board, and as you discussed yesterday, 5 seats of those are currently filled. 2 cosmetologists are filled. 1 cosmetologist, just stepped down in April. It was the end of his term, so he resigned. We do have 1 esthetician who is serving until her position is filled. We do not have a manicurist, and we have not had a manicurist since 2019, since I began with the board. And we do have 2 barbers serving, 1 of those serving until the position is filled. And to answer some of the questions of why do we have these board member vacancies, I want to see if I can put this into some perspective for you. Of our board makeup, with 2 of those being cosmetologists, we have 18,000 licensed cosmetologists to fill those 2 positions. On the flip side, we have 2 barber positions. We have 2,000 barbers to fill those positions. In addition, if a barber is interested in serving, if they don't reside in a congressional district that's vacant, they're not able to serve in that capacity because that district is already filled. So although our board has equal representation across the board license types, the ratio of the board member makeup sometimes causes issues with having the willingness to fill those positions in the districts that needed to be filled. And we have proactively sought to fill that manicurist vacancy. We were boots on ground. We were making phone calls. We were visiting those nail salons. We talked with many people about trying to drive some interest in filling this position. One of the comments that I got from the manicurist is primarily the manicurists come here from out of country. They're first generation or second generation migrants that are here working, and they typically have a not the best opinion of state government. They don't want to be involved in the boards, and they don't want to be involved in the state governments. So it's not that we're not trying to fill these positions. It's not that we are letting them sit there and not getting the word out. There are some individuals who aren't interested in filling these positions. There's the makeup and the lack of the numbers to fill the positions that we need to fill. And then there's the congressional districts that may or may not be open. In the last 3 months, I've had 3 to 4 cosmetologists that have contacted me that are interested in serving, but the district that they live in has someone serving, so they're not eligible.
What do you do for reach out? You said you've called. You've got 35,000 members total that you service, almost 36.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you send out emails to every one of them, letting them know about these openings?
For the manicurist position, we did send out emails.
How many? How many times did you reach out?
I'm not even sure. That was
See, that's a problem, because, I mean, you should say, well, we send out an email each month on our, do you have a newsletter?
We do not. But we are working on that with the new database transition that Ms. Thomas mentioned yesterday. We're hoping to have a mail distribution list that we can push out information at all times to our licensees. But we did have our inspectors in those salons in that district working every day asking individuals if they would be interested in serving.
I do have a comment for those inspectors, because we've got some comments in here. I'll ask you a little later. But I do think there's got to be more other than saying boots on the ground and some nice little cliches, honestly.
Right.
I like to hear we sent out 35,000 emails for 12 months in a row.
Okay.
And then we followed up with phone calls, and this is results. So it doesn't sound like you're tracking your efforts.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Members? I'm sorry, if you wanted to continue, you're certainly welcome to.
Okay.
No, that's fine. We're kind of a committee that is almost like on the Supreme Court. You just, start throwing out questions, and that's good. No.
Yeah, and on another note too, some of the board members that serve who are feeling, we're grateful that they continue to serve in that capacity. The board members that are serving, they're willing and dedicated to this profession. We've got a great board member makeup, but for some of the board members, it's a hardship to take a day off of work to attend board business, the time that it takes to handle the board business. In this profession, if you're not in front of a client, if you're not behind your chair, you're not earning income.
Do you have any of them here that you can introduce?
We do.
I'd love to meet them in person or have them introduced.
Our board member, Daniel Powers, is a licensed barber. Our board member, Michelle Alvis Callahan, is a licensed esthetician. Our vice chair happens to be out of the country, and this was planned previous to the date that we were notified of the hearing. And also with us today, we have our Neva Conway, who is our legal counsel, and we have several staff members here as well.
Can you have the staff stand up?
We have Stacy Little, who is my executive assistant, Pam Garner, who is my human resources officer and accountant. We have Madison Johnson, who is my school coordinator. Tony Ward is my shop coordinator. And Matt Higgins is one of our field investigators.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry I had to leave here, but I'm just looking at the financials, Mr. Representative Underwood. I'd love for you to look over this with me, but just looking in general on page 21, that for 2021, 2022, total receipts came in were approximately 2.294 million, and the disbursements were 2.31 million. Obviously, you have reserves in there, and we've been talking about reserves and what you do with that unobligated cash. There's not a plan that your board has for that particular that money that's left over year to year? Obviously, it just get retained.
There's not a plan according to the code, but we have a plan.
Okay, can you
These
tell us
funds,
about that?
I can.
Thanks.
These funds are reinvested back into our board as far as technology costs. Currently, we are upgrading our licensing database to streamline some of the services that we provide for our licensees. This is at a cost of about $500,000. Without these reserves that we're able to carry over from year to year, we would not be able to make these necessary upgrades from time to time. This is a project that's years in the making. In addition, we would like to reach out to a software company that's able to automate some of the paper processes that we come in. We have a certain population of our licensees that still prefers to send in the manual applications. They want the paper applications. They're not tech savvy. They're more comfortable doing this. So we have lots and lots of paper that come into our office every day. The software company can take the paper, scan it through, and integrate it into our database electronically, which would cut down on the time that it takes for us to process that paper and get those licenses back out in a timely manner to our licensees.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
you might want to consider in looking at communication. I don't know, did you say you had a website?
We do.
Okay. Then that's a good avenue to get things out, get information out for people, upcoming vacancies or what have you, or even
Right.
highlighting people that are doing good things and
Right.
maybe kind of explaining the important role that this board plays
Right.
and how it impacts their lives and really their input, because the concerns that we look at significant issues and any complaints that have come in. And it's coming in from those people that are out there.
Right.
So, they need to understand the connection. I understand that what you're saying, the people come here that are immigrants and what have you, and they're trying to, we all use them, and some of them are my best friends and everything.
Right.
But I'm hoping that they'll understand. And that's the first thing that I look at when I go into a shop. Where's the license?
Right.
I'm looking for that, and I'm looking for whether it's up to date.
Right.
So I hope that they will understand this, and and if there's an opportunity to use that to help get the word out, sometimes you have to use it to educate people.
Right. We have been more proactive about posting things on our website. We've hired a dedicated IT specialist for our agency that can maintain the website and add updates as necessary. We've been able to add more information to our website, more useful information to our website, and we're currently in the process of revisiting every page on our website and seeing what needs to be updated, getting rid of information that is outdated, and trying to make that a more user-friendly experience for those who are using the website.
One last question, because you do have a number of persons that are, English is not first language.
Right.
Is your website, is it bilingual?
It is not.
So that, for a lot of people, that's how they communicate. So it might help to put it in their language so they can understand it.
We had checked into that, and there's a significant cost of doing that, but that would be an excellent use of that cash reserve that we have.
I'm going to say this over and over, but the licensees are the ones that are paying this money, and if there's unused funds at the end of the year, obviously, I think that should go back, or part of it should go back to them. Obviously, you needed to have that for the system you were just talking
Right.
about, and that makes their life and operational costs more
Absolutely.
efficient. So I agree with you in what you were saying. I think that's great. If there's that plan that's not in our book, but we could get a copy of that to Dixie, and so we're able to have a copy of that from your
Okay.
board. I'd like to see that.
I'll be glad to do
The other
that.
things, and I'm going to say the same thing over and over, but, consumer protection, number one, anytime we can give money back and help, the consumer itself and the licensees, consumer education, and then back to communications. I think the newsletter, website, that gives the licensee the updates of what's going on in your board, because obviously a lot of your licensees are just going in their office every
I
day
agree.
and doing their job and then
I
going home.
agree.
But you are making changes down here. So if any way you could do some type of a newsletter or something going out, obviously with those unused funds, I think that would give them more communication of what's going on.
Right.
Okay.
As Ms. Thomas stated, this database transition started in January. So we're still fairly early in the stages of completely migrating the data. But once the system is fully in place and fully operational, we will have the capacity to create a portal for each licensee where we can put out news blast for those licensees. We can put out a newsletter for those licensees. We haven't had the ability with our previous database, which was somewhat outdated, to compile those huge mail merge lists and get that information out in an efficient manner. And as a fellow CPA, I'm always looking at things from a cost-saving, cost-effective perspective to make sure that not only are we providing information to our licensees, but we're doing it in a way that's cost-effective, a good use of our time, and the output provides a benefit to our licensees.
One of my other concentrations is how we treat our citizens. And in one of your questionnaires, one of the replies was that the inspectors are always rude and hateful.
Yes, ma'am. We have had a problem with that, but I can assure you that these issues have been addressed. We have had some necessary change in personnel. We've had more training sessions with our inspectors to ensure that our inspectors are inspecting across the board the same requirements for every shop that they go into, that they treat the licensees with courtesy and respect. Another thing that we've implemented, if an inspector cites a violation at a shop, that they do not walk out of that shop without thoroughly explaining to that shop owner or those licensees how to correct those violations. And one thing that was mentioned yesterday, we're doing less quality control inspections, but still the number of failures have decreased. That's a product of the quality control inspections, is that we spend more time with our licensees training them how to do this, teaching them the proper way to clean and sanitize these implements, and to ensure that the client that comes in for service is as healthy as they are when they leave as they were when they walked in. So for us, the goal was not to hand out more failed inspections. It was to teach the licensees the compliance requirements and increase the pass rate and increase the compliance for a better, healthier environment for the clients.
Okay, thank you so much. I do think that's important. And that you weed out anybody that's treating with anybody with any less respect, because everybody deserves respect.
Right.
And if they don't know any better, the education is what you want. You don't want revenue off violations or whatever your
Right.
punitive stuff is. You
Right.
actually want them to be better and have a healthy environment.
The fines and the penalties and the failures are not a goal at all. The primary goal is compliance for the health and safety of the client.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we don't want to hear about it when we get a haircut the next time. Right.
Can you address one other issue that I have? I don't know if it's the lack of response or the delay in response, that when people, a shop calls and they want a list of certified
Yes, ma'am.
persons, and the delay in that, there was one complaint that was on here, of course, it's one, but it may be multiplied. This may be an issue. I hope it's not systemic.
I don't believe it's systemic. We have had a couple of occasions where there has been an unacceptable delay in the information that was provided to the licensee or to the individual requesting the information. And again, when those instances come to our attention, it's dealt with. It's not something that's acceptable to us. And one thing that I have pushed in this agency is that I expect all of our employees to provide excellent customer service. We're here for the licensees. We're here to respond to them. We're here to provide them the information that they need and to provide them with a safe environment in which to obtain their services.
So what is the process? If someone calls and they need the list, walk me through that process and tell me if you have a timeline to get that information to them.
Typically, it's the same day. And for example, I think you mentioned yesterday a shop owner was interested in verifying the status of a licensee. The shop owner can call us and we can verify on the phone that day the status of that licensee. So if there was such a delay, it was an anomaly. And if it happens and if it comes to our attention, it's addressed. So if you're hearing things from your constituents that you're not satisfied with or you see a problem with, I truly wish you would reach out to us because we can fix it.
Something has happened because I remember, but this has been a few years back when you all were changing the rules about whether to use the razors or some, to use it or not to use it. And some were still using it and some, because even though people did have, some of them had signs up. But I think it was the back and forth on some rules that were had, and I don't know if it was during your tenure or not, but I remember one shop owner complaining that, they need to make up their mind. You
Right.
come in and somebody tells you one thing, somebody else comes in and said, no, you don't have to do that. I think they're looking for consistency. And again, these are people that just trying to do their job,
Exactly. And I think that goes back to some of the comments that you made yesterday about inconsistent comments coming from this office. Those are some things that I walked into a few years ago when I took this position. We've made proactive steps to address those kinds of things. And one problem was that an inspector may read the code and the inspector reads it this way, but they interpret it this way. And that's not how the code is written. If this is how the code is written, this is how it should be interpreted. So we've had numerous meetings with our inspectors to make sure that we are interpreting the code the way that it's written. We're not throwing our personal opinions in there.
And that is prominent in your website. Thank you. A list of banned items. So that is something you're doing an effective job on your website of communicating.
Thank you.
And on their website, what I think Senator Coleman Madison's coming back to was a respondent that was on page 28 that we talked about yesterday. He says, originally I called on the phone and was told that I could not get a list of licensed cosmetologists and nail technicians, but I could go online and look it up to see who was properly licensed. However, that is not true. The website portion that allows you to look up whether or not someone is currently licensed does not work and has not worked for over a year. This September will be 2 years if that function on the website is not available to us. Is that fixed already?
That is part of this data migration problem that we're having that's still ongoing. But at the point that the migration and conversion is complete, there will be a verification link on our website that anyone can go in and look up a license or a licensee and verify a license. But in the meantime, if people need to verify a license, our office is more than happy to take the personnel to find the information that they're needing and get it back to them in a timely manner.
So 2 questions. When is that going to be accomplished?
I'm hoping by the end of December.
So this year?
Yes, I'm hoping the end of December.
Okay, and the next thing is that she was saying that she was called and was told to, it might have been him, I don't know, was called and said to look it up online. So now you are doing that manually or at your office, is that correct? So you're able to do that at this point? They can get,
At the
what I'm asking
time,
for,
yeah.
they can get the information they need, you're saying, through your office, is that
Through our office, but right now the online feature is not available.
okay? As soon as we can get that rolling, that'd be great. But
I
where
agree.
you're going, I know you got a plan, that's good. Let's just make sure.
Thank you. I agree because we get numerous phone calls for the license verifications, but we are very responsive to those.
Thank you.
So, well, congrats on the CPA.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
It was quite a few years ago, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, mine too. So just a couple of items of note. One, when you've heard us talk about these board openings, and it's an ongoing thing for
Right.
everyone. Okay, so it's not just this is our one
Right.
conversation. These boards operate in a way that matters from coast to coast, top to bottom, east and west. And if a board goes a certain amount of time with a person serving in that role that shouldn't because they've been there too long, or various openings that might risk having enough there to conduct business, it just kind of it's an ongoing thing. So we're going to keep emphasizing that these board positions need to be filled and filled on
Exactly.
time, sort of a thing. So that's why you're hearing that, because we hear it so much.
I
as we go
understand.
through this.
I
get
understand,
your
and
thing
I
about
agree with you.
The 2,000 barbers did surprise me. Well, I mean, not that I've been to one lately, but that's not many, so that's surprising. One quick question: the 2020-21 revenue versus the 21-22 dropped by $1 million.
Yes.
And I know there's some fluctuations. I see 2.7s and 2.3s, and maybe the 3.1 was just a huge year. But I was kind of curious if you had any sort of analysis about why that was such a variance.
So our licensees renew every 2 years. The bulk of our licensees renew in the even number years.
Okay.
And the odd number years, the bulk renew. In the even number years, we have a significantly lower portion that renew during that time. So we're going to see fluctuations in that revenue from odd number years to even number years. And it can range anywhere from $800,000 to $1 million, depending on the number of licensees that are renewing. And it also spans the fiscal year. So you may have shop renewals or expire September 30. You may have a third of the shops renew prior to September 30 and 2/3 renew after September 30. So that revenue is in the same calendar year, but it's going to be split across the fiscal years.
So then the 2.1 correlates to the 2.3 of 19 to 20, and the 3.1 corresponds to the 2.7 between 20 and 18 is kind of what we need to look at. Okay, that's good. And then last thing on the unobligated cash balances, this year, you've gone from 1.9 to 2.1, and I know during that time frame you've made some investments, which is going to be reflected in these as well. The only purpose behind that we keep thinking about on this is money circulating is better than money sitting, and it's not that there's an opinion I have of what your reserve should be. I just like knowing that those of you who live the industry and have a passion about it have had the time to look at that money and say, this is what my industry could be made better by. Whether it is lowering fees for a while or investing in their education or whatever it is that you choose to do, because y'all know more than I do. Just knowing there's a plan in place that we can refer to and just know that that's being done. That's the only purpose of that.
Thank you.
And you know more than we. You're the expert. So that's why.
And one thing I would like to add, of course, like everything else, costs are increasing across the board. Our testing fees are increasing. Our lease payments are on an escalation clause. So instead of having to pass these costs along to our licensees, we're able to absorb those costs. And we'll absorb those increasing costs as long as we can without passing those along to our licensees.
You have a copy of the report.
Yes, sir.
And there's a number of comments in there that from licensees and
yes, sir,
that you saw, that we saw.
Yes,
I'm sure you'll be working on that.
Absolutely, we've already resolved a lot of those issues.
And can you let us know? Who do we need to be let know to have a correction?
Any information that we get from anybody that's speaking today or addressing any of these issues, if you want to forward that to Holly, and then Holly will disseminate that information to board members as well as examiner's office. So.
Okay.
Would you let us know when you get the website?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, members, any other questions, comments, concerns? Not? Thank you so much.
I would like to add one thing, if you don't mind. I truly appreciate all of your support supporting the interstate compact legislation for cosmetology. Representative Pascal sponsored this bill for us. I'm a military wife. Both of my sons are full-time military. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting that. That passed the House and the Senate with 0 nay votes. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I know that's been a major issue for the Lieutenant Governor on reciprocity of licenses and how that affects our military members, families, and civil servants that come to Alabama, and the ability to earn money for their family and provide for their family.
Yes.
So.
We were thrilled to be a part of it, and I was thankful for Representative Pascal for helping us with that.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you for highlighting that, because that's one of the things that we're trying to do is how to lower red tape and get people in there. So thank you for bringing that up. I do remember your legislation coming through the committee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, it will ease the ability for licensees to work within the state and outside of the state and vice versa.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the Private Investigation Board. Ms. Austin, are you coming to present some information on that?
Yes, sir. Good morning, members of the committee. Okay, you want me to just kind of?
I'm sure I know you were here yesterday. You heard some of the questions. You've had an opportunity, I hope, to review the report. And if you could address some of those issues that you heard questions about yesterday, and then anything else you want to tell us about the board, what you're doing, and hopefully, along the significant issues, if you want to address those as well as introduce your board, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. That's what I'd like to do first. Charles Knight, if you would stand, he's my board chairman. Mr. Eddie Cox, Charles is from Shelby County. I'm going to do geographic for Mr. Simpson. Eddie Cox, he is from Jefferson County also. Scott Hawk is from Mobile County. Jim Castile in the back is from Shelby County. And Jeff Hammond is from Jefferson County, and Daryl Tatum is from Lauderdale County. And Daryl is our newest member to the board and was appointed by the speaker. And then our general counsel is Ben Albritton. And then Will Parker, if Will will stand, he works on this board on a daily basis, 24/7. So he will be answering some of these questions as well. That is and we have other team members back at the office. I just wanted to bring up, I guess I'm just going to go down on some of the significant issues that we talked about yesterday, as far as financial discrepancies and stars. And I think I discussed this with y'all when we came in and took this board over in April of 2000. It had been without an executive director. It really was the 1st of December, so it really ended in November. And Mr. Charles Knight, my board chairman, and one other, I think they ran hurdle and came down here and drove to pick up mail and things like that. So for 5 months, things weren't paid and things were not done like that. And it took us, is because we were a brand new vendor into the system, the Austin group. It wasn't like we had but one other board. It took a long time to get us into the STAR system, so we were backlogged another 3 months prior to that, okay? Then the other thing I mentioned about emergency contracts, is we came in on an emergency contract in April of 2020, and Mr. Charles Knott, if you'd like to ask him any questions, they kept rolling it over each time, as I mentioned, because number one, it was COVID. Number two, there were some issues and litigation going on, and the purchasing department really did not want to do any RFPs during that time period. But if you'd like to ask Mr. Knight, he dealt with Mr. Jones about this the entire time, the first 6 months, then a year. And then after he retired and Miss Christine Cook came in, we met with Miss Cook as well as Mr. Charles Knight met with her, and then we're waiting on the template from the RFP, the same thing that I said regarding assisted living board as well. And there has been an RFP, and it has been, it was out for bid, it's back, it's issued. They've got a board meeting this afternoon, and we're in hopes that all the materials will be up here by 4 o'clock today to be on the calendar for September 7th meeting, as far as that goes. So that answers that. Then back to the payments. Once again, I mentioned this yesterday. Since the inception of this board and when we took the board over, all the contracts had always been billed on the first of every month for every board. We did that on all our boards because I followed the rules and what had been done for the previous people that had these boards. They were always billed on the first of the month and then paid towards the end of the month. We had no idea that, and any audit that had never been brought to our attention before. Of course, it was brought to our attention this time, and we have not obviously billed starting that process. We haven't billed for August, and we will from this day forward go and always bill at the end of the month. But just know that it was nothing intentional. Every board had always billed in the first of the month, okay? point, as far as during the COVID on both boards that I had, a lot of people said that they wanted to keep the same officers we had because of COVID. However, in June 1st of 2023, this year, we did go and elect new officers again because, as I mentioned, Mr. Darrell Tatum was appointed to the board. This is a unusual thing in the statute for this board. You know, a lot of times they'll say, you know, elect officers October or the fall of each year. This is every time a new member is appointed to the board that they ask for officer elections. So we're on top of that. We did do the elections of the officers in June 1 of this year once Mr. Tatum was appointed to the board. Okay. I know that there is one position that is open in the governor's office for a private investigator. There was an association meeting, and then some people have come and given some names forward to us. Nobody has been submitted to the governor's office. So if any of y'all know any private investigators that you think might be interested, please let us know. We would like to get some names over for the governor's office for that particular position that is open.
What kind of outreach are you doing to reach your licensees? Are you sending out emails? Do you have a newsletter? Or is it on your website?
It is on the Secretary of State's website. It is open on our website too, that there is a vacancy for that position. The association had a meeting in July. We went to that meeting and spoke to all of them and notified them. And then in our office, we have had several people that said they were interested, and we have gathered resumes from several people just in the last, I would say, in July and beginning of August.
Okay, so this is not held up at the governor's office. This is held up on people submitting names.
Yes,
To
ma'am.
the governor. I'm making a clarification of that. That's what I said. We'll get to you later. We'll get to you later. Now, Mr. Hawk, is he from Mobile or Baldwin County? Mobile. Okay, they've got you on this list as you're from Spanish Fort. I was just trying to figure out.
I just recently sold my house.
Oh, God bless you. No wonder you moved.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Well, we wanted you back. Thank you. And I'm sure you did that in preparation for not having to make that I-10 bridge commute while the construction. We want you back. All right. So, but what I want to do as far as your participation, because when you have openings, I do want to see that you've taken a proactive. That's going to be one of my things that you'll see is what proactive stances y'all have done to recruit people. So I'd like for you to measure that, track that, and stay on top of it, please. Thank you.
And Jim Castile, who's a board member back there, we've got him on it. Matter of fact, Will and Jim were meeting and contacting people 2 weeks ago and had lunch with people trying to get this position filled. And we will definitely have a name over to the governor's office, I can assure you, within the next 3 weeks.
And you have like an email database where you can blast an email?
Yes, Will can handle that.
Okie dokie.
Okay, and at this time, because we're going through significant issues and we're talking about board complaints, which I spoke to some of y'all about, Will, if you'll come forward on this, please. Will Parker, he really runs the day-to-day he deals with the PIs 24/7. We all do, but Will's love is the private investigation board, and he deals with them, and they enjoy talking to him all the time. So, Will, please come forward. And he's gonna do the complaint section, the fund section, payments, a couple of things. Will?
If you'll do us a favor, if you'll introduce yourself to the board.
Yes, good morning. My name is Will Parker. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank y'all so much. First, I want to start off with two of the significant issues. One was a double deposit, and the other was the invoices that were not paid until the previous year. I think two of those were OIT. We had a printing, and one was for Staples. I would just like to say, when we took, ma'am, Office of Information Technology. So when we took over this board, we did have a lady that was working with us who was familiar with STARS. She got COVID twice, I believe, and she just was not able to return. So at that point in time, I literally had to learn STARS. And that is it's an ongoing adventure that today I'm still learning things in stars. But I just want to tell you, for the deposit issues and for the non-payment of those 3 or 4, that's 100% on me. And moving forward, because now I'm doing all of the stars myself, and I can guarantee this committee that with this board, all of the invoices are up to date and paid. So I just want to make that very clear. That was 100% my fault, and I take full blame for that. But there is a learning curve, and that does happen. And when we took over this board, we had 5 or 6 months of work that had to be done. We had to build the database up. You know, we had applications that were sitting in the files. We had people that were waiting for testing. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on. I'm not using that excuse, but I am taking full responsibility for that.
Can you tell, when did y'all take over?
April of 2020.
April of 2020.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to address that, but
So the prior significant findings of, you know, there being months, I mean, some of those I think were, you know, prior to.
right. So anything after March or April, is it March?
It would be, excuse me, April of 2020 is when we took over. A lot of these things that had gone before the Board of Adjustments, as I mentioned to y'all yesterday, after 3 months, they go before the Board of Adjustments. When you have an agency that's set still for 5 months and nobody paid bills, you got a lot of things that went before the Board of Adjustments. So it looks like we weren't paying our bills. These were bills when they came before Board of Adjustments for 19 and 20 and even 21, those were things that we didn't get in our hands and weren't able to even look at until April of 20. And then to get into the STAR system as a brand new vendor for the first time. It's not like we had ever been, you know, Claire Austin had to have a login with my own stuff. Will Parker has to have a login. We'd never had login information. And that was a very big backlog that took us 3 months to remember because we were in COVID. And a nice gentleman, Matt Gantz over at, Brent Gant over at Comptroller's office worked with us night and day to try to get this done because he was somebody who was working there all the time.
So just for clarification for me, some of these invoices they're talking about are submitted well after that. You know, for instance, office supplies, July of 2021, an invoice was submitted and that was paid in May of 22. Several other ones, you know, $3,000 a month for web hosting that was submitted for May, June, July, August, and September of 2021. And they weren't paid until a year later, September of 22. So tell me how that fits into the equation about what you're telling us.
Okay. For example, Staples, based out of Dallas, Texas, that went on for literally almost 2 years. Because y'all integrated with it having STAR system and purchasing, then they integrated this Alabama buys. We literally spoke to these people, every 2 or 3 months. We could not get, it wasn't that we didn't want to pay Staples. And I'll be honest with you, we've never ordered from them ever again because we could never get.
Yeah, we've never ordered.
We ordered from them that one time, and it literally took us a year and a half to pay these people. And it wasn't because the Austin group didn't want to pay the bills for all of their boards. It's we couldn't get it paid through Alabama buys and the whole STARS processing. And so therefore, we just don't even deal with we don't deal with Staples anymore. Across the board, the Austin group deals with Alabama Deaf and Blind. I try to go with a state agency, an interstate agency that I can buy paper and supplies from because of that situation with Staples. Okay. That was a year and a half to get taken care of. Right. Because you have to use whoever the contractor is that the purchasing department has done. And they would send us all these different people and one person left. And it just wasn't worth the hassle to me as running a board efficiently to be able to pay somebody. And so we just don't use them. We use in-house agencies, like I said.
Alabama Deaf and Blind is a wonderful.
Yeah, we use Alabama Deaf and Blind to pretty much buy all our products. Number one, it's a lot less expensive. I would encourage every board in the state of Alabama to use them. It's a state entity. It's a great cause and much less expensive. But that's who I use from this day forward after dealing with the situation we had at Staples.
Thank you for that plug on them.
They
do an outstanding job in what they do.
They are wonderful. They're efficient. They get it to you immediately. And I can't say enough about using them as your provider for any kind of office supplies. And then speaking of, and then another one we've used corrections for years for our licensing for it looks like a driver's license. And during COVID, that got so backlogged that, Will would get the people their license, they would be licensed, but they wanted their driver's license card, to say, hey, I'm a PI from somewhere. So we took it upon ourselves because they had some illnesses over there. And then they had, with COVID, we decided to personally go ahead and buy our own printing machine. And so we do not charge any board to print their little license ID. And it may cost us 10 cents, whereas before we were having to charge people $6. So what's that been, 2 years? Yeah, that was 2 years. It will be this September. We bought our own card printing machine. And when you renew your license, we pop it out that day, put it in the mail, and send it directly to you. So that's been a great savings and very efficient for all consumers in the state.
And I'd also like to say the Alabama Department of Corrections, their printing department is wonderful.
Yeah, they are too.
We have had no problems with them whatsoever. They do a great job.
Members?
I'm looking at your website, and you've got, when did you say your next meeting is?
We have one today. It's on the Secretary of State's website.
On your website, you're advertising a Monday, May 9th meeting on your front page. Now, I just Googled Private Investigation Board, State of Alabama. So your website is not up to date on advertising your meetings.
Okay, I will.
Who maintains your website?
The state.
OIT does, and then we use a company called iGov. And that was another vendor that was not necessarily paid on time. And the situation, I think they were, but they were sending checks to Atlanta, and their company, for some reason, what's the situation? They weren't counting the months or something like that.
They were applying.
They weren't applying the checks to the right month. We had mailed the checks, and I guess the right and left hand didn't know where they were, but we were not behind on our checks with them. It was an accounting issue with them. But they are up to date now. All right, what else?
Representative Underwood?
So just clarification purposes, on these financials, like the others with such a low revenue, and we have to watch the money's going out. And it looks like over a 4-year time frame, it goes from 103 to 113, so that's in line. But because they're so small, it's just something to kind of keep up with. And so I just make mention of that. But I do know, there was some confusion for me early on these management contracts where, yours is a set amount a month, but that represents several things for you. So, like more than one employee, more than one, investigator. I'm not sure what all. Could you just kind of lay out for me that monthly amount represents these 5 or 6 or 7 things, which should give some clarity to what all, like if that were done individually, it'd be broken out separately on these financials. It'd be a payroll tax, benefits, and then it'd be office, rent, or whatever. It'd be broken out into several different things. So kind of clarify for me how that money is related back to the board on what you provide.
Yeah, let me say first off, the base hour workload on the contract is $175 or 175 hours.
Okay.
So if you multiply that by the monthly amount, it roughly comes out to, I think it's $45 an hour is what the Austin Group does get paid. And yes, we've got the.
Yeah, and I was just looking for what was provided. I get what you're saying.
And we've got the 14th floor of the PNC Bank building. You're probably better at that.
Yeah.
Okay. You have myself, you have Will, who's the CFO. We have another person, Jackie Taylor, who's a licensed specialist. We have another gentleman, Andre Mitchell, who's an investigator out in the field for us. And then we also usually throughout the year have college kids that work with us throughout the year. I try to recruit college kids that are looking for internships from either Huntington, AUM, or Alabama state. I usually have an intern every year. Like this last year, I had one that went from October all the way till he left to go to Auburn in August to an addition because they want to get credit and they want to learn about government.
I like that.
So I've kind of always done that in my business professional practice. I've always done that. Then obviously we have office rent. We have 14th floor, and then I also have the entire 15th floor of that building where I have training desks for individuals to accommodate up to 30 people where they have their own individual training. I did that during COVID and specifically did that for the assisted living board because as I mentioned to y'all, they have to come in and now get, like this week they're in there, they have to get 24 hours. So they have 3 days from 8:30 to 5:30. Today will be 8:30 to noon if you're a Cat 1. And if you're a Cat 2, it goes to 4:30. And I also have an area where we can feed them lunch and they stay there. And then also something I do for all of my boards is the gentleman that owns my building, thank goodness, he owns about 4 hotels, which some of y'all may stay at. And he gives me a state rate, even better than the legislative rate, almost $99 for all of my applicants that come in, and they can stay at the Hampton Inn next door or the DoubleTree, and they literally can walk across and come up to the 15th floor and do their training.
So this board, you do training for them as well?
No, we do not do any training for the private investigating. That is all done with CEUs. There's trainers that we license, and then the association does trainers as well.
Let me add one more thing. The younger people that we work with, we have a policy. We answer the phone on the second ring. We don't go to voicemail. That is completely, we do not do that. So we answer on the second ring. Applications that come in, we try to turn them around in 48 hours. Renewals, and then new renewal of licensees or new licensees, we try to get those out in 48 hours. And we're able to do that with their certificate, their letter, and also with their ID card. So we do push very hard on the customer service and making sure we answer emails within a couple of hours. We just like to stay on top of things and be as efficient as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
We don't want somebody saying they tried to call and reach somebody and they didn't reach anybody in my office, or that somebody only answers the phone 2 days a week. We are there. Somebody's there 8:30 to 5:30, 5 days a week answering the phone at our office.
You need to update your website on that because you took over in April of 2020, and on your front page of your website, it says you're still in transition and a special email with the Austin group to send if you want a response. So that doesn't scream that you're up on top of that.
Going one step further on that, you know, y'all are a third-party contract, correct, for this particular agency or board?
Yes, sir.
And then from that, I think from everything that we've known in the past, y'all are experts on this because it's what you do full-time, right? If you want to build a door, I feel like I'm an expert because that's what I do every day. But having said that, you know, throughout Alabama, the boards, agencies, commissions, you guys have got to be knowledgeable, competent, and then through your group and through your experience, both of you for that matter, and your team, you should be an expert in the field. But I assume that this board, including myself, is going to hold y'all from here forward to a higher level of quality coming in. It sounds like we talked yesterday, you inherited a lot of stuff. You're going through that process. But where these, number one, unused funds, back to Chairman Wilcox was talking about with consumer communications, website creation, you've already got it. Website updates, you need to do that, obviously. If there's not a newsletter going back out to the consumer, I think you should be able to do that. Consumer cost, any way that you can lower any cost for the consumer, obviously we want to do that with higher efficiency. Consumer protection, number one. Consumer education, I'll talk to you more about those later. But in the end, I just want to make sure that y'all know that you inherited it. We heard what you said yesterday. That doesn't mean that next year there shouldn't be any significant findings. You've got 6 in here for 2023. Some of these y'all probably handled, some of you haven't. I'm not going to dig into them today. But if you're going to be an expert, I want you to be an expert. And then next year when this comes back, let's have a clean record anyway. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And we absolutely will. We hope that everything gets settled in the board meeting today on the contracts. And like I mentioned before, we don't like to deal in emergency contracts because there's no stability for us or anything else. So we're very pleased and happy that there's an RFP and contract to be awarded.
All right, members.
can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
This audit is important to us because it teaches us to learn from our mistakes, and we're taking that very seriously. I'd also like to say thank you to Rodney, who was our auditor. He did a wonderful job, an absolutely wonderful job. He is top notch. I will say that. So thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. We appreciate y'all coming and addressing the committee.
Thank y'all.
you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Real Estate Commission. Anybody here from the Real Estate Commission?
That-
Yeah.
Yeah, be an expert. If you're gonna be an expert, don't have significant findings and don't waste our time up there. 7 on that one.
I understand. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Fine. You could just let the board know who you are and
Yes, sir. I'm Vaughn Poe. I'm the Executive Director of the Alabama Real Estate Commission. Good morning, and we sincerely appreciate your time. I was here yesterday, so I did hear a lot of your concerns, but before I get into that, there they are. I'll introduce some of our board members as soon as they get in.
Did you bring back up?
All right. So, again, we have with us this morning Commission Chair Emmett Barron from the 5th Congressional District, Commissioner Randy McKinney from the 1st Congressional District, Commissioner Jimmy Ann Campbell of the 2nd Congressional District, Commissioner Betsy Eccles of the 3rd Congressional District, Commissioner James Dye of the 6th Congressional District, Commissioner Sarita Tucker Smith of the 7th Congressional District. I do have 3 commissioners that are not present. One is out of the country, one is planning a wedding, and the other's with her mother.
Commissioner McKinney from Baldwin County or Mobile County? Baldwin County. Okay. On your thing, he's listed as Mobile. I was just clarifying that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We are happy to have him as a representative of Baldwin County. Thank you very much.
I understand that, and I knew you were. I know Mr. McKinney. I respect him, but I was just hoping that he had relocated to Mobile. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed everybody's trying to take care of my friends in Mobile, but I don't see anybody on these boards from Baileyton, Alabama.
take note, huh?
All right. For the sake of time, I will start by addressing Representative Underwood's questions about our fund structure and sort of how they function and operate. I had a good dream last night about having $10 million. Unfortunately, it was only a dream. We don't have that. We have 3 funds, as you can see on page 17, and their structure is designed to fit the manner in which we renew our real estate licensees. So we renew on a 2-year cycle, and so what you have is our operating fund, and then our proportionate fund, and that proportionate fund is really an escrow fund. That's where funds are held over in that off-cycle year so that we have operations. And so if you look at October of those off years, you'll see a transfer into the actual operating account. So our second-year budget is kept there in the proportionate fund. On the recovery fund, that is protected by law. We cannot touch it without a court order. And that fund is designed to have parties that have been damaged by one of our licensees awarded. There are limits on that. It's outlined in law, but we can't go in there if we have an overage. The importance of that and understanding how these funds operate goes back to an incident that occurred in 2008. A lot of you remember the housing market crash. Well, real estate goes with the economy. And as you could see in that time period, when the economy went down, real estate transactions went down, disposable income went down, our licensee numbers went down, which means my revenue went down. We budget extremely conservatively for that reason. I don't know what the economy is going to do next year. If it takes a dive, we've got to be financially prepared for that. And so you'll see a lot of funds in that account, but what I want to identify specifically are reserves. I think it's good fiscal responsibility to have at least 1 or 2 years of full operating in those reserve accounts. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. And so back to your other question about what do we do with carryover funds, I'll talk about it here in a moment. We put a lot into consumers and licensees, but also reserves. When I took over 3 years ago, we had about a year and a half's funds in reserve, and I've tried to build that along the way. But again, we've not increased license fees in 20 years. There's nothing that I can do to increase any of our revenues other than wait on the next renewal cycle. So unlike some other boards or agencies, I can't create a new widget or gizmo to, increase our revenues. I have to wait on the next renewal cycle and then again hope that our active and inactive licensees actually renew those licenses. We have about 12,000 inactive licensees, and another fact that I've tried to clear up over the years, those inactive licensees are still participatory licensees. They're not practicing, but they have to maintain that inactive real estate license. And so they come in on the 2-year cycle and either renew or lapse out. We really watch that number because, again, the economy will determine where they go and what they do. If the economy is well, those folks will activate, they'll start transacting. If the economy is doing poorly, they may go inactive or just lapse out.
So let me just jump in real quick on that. That was a great explanation, and my comments weren't critical. These are good looking financials, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And there are a ton of members statewide. I mean,
47,000.
47,000.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, that's impressive. That means that there's a need, and it's reflecting itself in the financials. So, just as a quick, just a bird's eye. They're roughly, your expenditures are about 4.3 million for 21, 22.
Yes,
roughly.
sir.
That's your operation account. And so, you have cash reserves of, right at $500,000 in that operation account, a little over $1 million, which you said are protected by law, and the other one. So that one, I wasn't aware of that. So I'm learning in a lot of ways.
Yes, sir.
In this stuff, and that's most of my comments are for questions. And then unobligated on the proportion of almost 9, which it's grown, and obviously it moves up and down, but the lowest was 4 years ago at 5.5. And then you're at 8.9 today, which is kind of similar to the 1920 year. So that's one of the issues I had a while ago with cosmetology. I don't need to compare side by side years. I need to compare every other year.
Yes, sir.
Because of the way those come in. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So then that 8.9 of 21, 22 compared to the 8.2 of 19 and 20.
Yes, sir.
And likewise for 20 and 21, it's 6 compared to the 5.5. So
Yes,
that was good to know because I did see how you moved in. I think in this particular year you moved in 3 was the amount, and that was entirely sufficient. And I guess y'all just decide that every year. The board just decides how the money's moved. Just
yes, sir.
Based
Our
on
commissioners review. We
Yeah.
look at our priorities. We look at our obligations. One thing that is of note, and you can see there, I took over this agency in 2019. Some of you were here for that. And the first thing that we did was we took a knife to the budget. I'll just be frank with you. We took my assistant state director, who's also here, Teresa Hoffman. We just pulled the budget out. We did a line by line so that I understood where we were and what we were spending. I was a commissioner prior to that, and so I understood some of the bench type operations, but breaking the budget out and talking with the folks that have to execute it every day is different. And so we looked at the budget, we saw where we could cut. And one example of that I talked about the last time I was here, we had a paper periodical called The Update. It was mailed out to our licensees 3 times per year at a cost of about $75,000 annually. We cut that. That thing's electronic now. I mean, no one does paper in that manner anymore. We surveilled our licensees to see who still wanted paper. And I think we had less than 50 people. Most people would prefer to get an email, read it. So that was one instance where we took $75,000 that we'd been expending prior to, we put it back in the operating budget, and now that's just an increase that we have. The only other place that, as you can see, that I have fluctuation would be in salaries and benefits. All of our folks are state employees, so you sort of know how my restrictions are there.
But still in the same, just to kind of keep in theme with what we've talked about, and I do appreciate your attention to detail. It's obvious that you're not unaware of what's going on in these financials, and I appreciate that tremendously. Is if I took the off year of the 20 and 21, your reserves are somewhere around the 6.2 million or so, somewhere in that rough category, and I am very conservative by nature too, and I don't think anyone in America saves like they should. Well, a few do, but they're very few and far between. And so I appreciate your having a set amount for reserve. I think that's fantastic. A lot of our cities and municipalities and county governments are not in a place where they can have a reserve like they should. But I'm not sure 2 years is. That's a pretty large number.
Yes, sir.
And you're the experts. You know what your industry needs. I just encourage money to cycle and move, and so that's my only comment. Is I'm not sure 2 years is a.
Well, what I did was basically I took a look at the last time we had a slump, a financial slump, and then I compared that to the recovery period from that slump. It took us about 4 years, which are 2 renewal cycles. It took us 4 years to recover from having that downturn in 2008. And so I thought, and again, good practice, have at least 2 operating years on hand. So if we tank out again, I don't have to come to you all and ask about increasing license fees. We've got the money on hand. We're good to go. And this is important because we are not a general fund agency. We are totally funded by our licensees, period. So if I make a mistake on the budget, I can't come to you all hat in hand and ask for money. We're not a general fund agency. And so it's important that we're extremely conservative with how we spend and how we save.
And I agree with that. I just wanted to.
Yes, sir.
In line with some of the conversations we've had before, hearing that from you is good, knowing that you've got a goal in mind and you're working toward it. I would like for us to have that kind of, where we can refer back to that and say, okay, this is his goal, this is what he's wanting to go, and the direction the board wants to do with it. We're going to say that to everyone that comes up here regarding the cash reserves, and so just the same of you. If you'll just lay that out for us so we'll know, then we'll know what your plan is and what your objective is.
There is good news as well.
All right.
We are growing.
Financials are not bad.
We're growing. We're still growing. During COVID-19, we were one of the agencies, or as better yet, we were one of the industries that were exempt. And so we continued working. We didn't lock our doors. Our licensees were still transacting real estate. We started growing during COVID-19. We didn't falter. We grew. And so if you look, you'll see our licensee numbers increased. During COVID-19, we were growing at a rate of about 14 new real estate licensees per day.
Wow.
Currently, that same number is about 8 or 9 per day. So each and every day, we're issuing roughly 9 or 10 new real estate licenses. That's per application submitted, of course, but we're still growing. And so, I'll talk a little bit more about how we're responding to that, because with a larger population, there's a larger responsibility. We have more real estate licensees now than we've ever had in the agency's 96-year history. We've never had this many real estate licensees. And so we're doing some things internally and externally to cope with that. Education, for instance.
Representative Simpson, I think, had a.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in here while I can on that.
Yes, sir.
I specifically get the rough of being kind of too tough on people, but I do want to acknowledge you've done a tremendous job. From where you were from 2019 when we came in with submissions from 2019 to have 34,000 licenses, 12,000 inactive licenses. You're dealing with a large number of what you're dealing with here to have resolved all of your prior significant issues. Your only significant issue this time, you had documentation to prove that you were right, that the complainants were wrong. This is light years ahead of where they were in 2019. And I just want to commend you and let you know that your work and your efforts have not gone unnoticed by the ones that remember what happened and how it was before. So job well done.
Yes, sir. Well, my flak jacket's outside, so.
Well, while we're on the compliment train, your website is a dynamic website. I need to look through and see what you pay for it, but it looks very responsive and has a lot of good information for your consumers. So you're giving them good information, and it looks like it's easy to get to. So I did want to point that out, that I've looked at it, and seems like you're doing everything right there as well.
Well, I'll springboard into the other part now, since you're there. We are very licensee focused and have been over the years, but we do also realize that we are a consumer protection agency. And so we instituted a few initiatives to address that, and some of which, not to name them all, we have a lot of consumer and licensee engagement. We have a hybrid monthly commission hearing. So each month we live broadcast our commission hearings. Those folks are there, and I sort of put them in a pickle because they're broadcast across the state of Alabama. And believe it or not, we also have reciprocal real estate licensees in other states, and they log on. They log on as well. We have coffee with the commission the day prior. So the Wednesday prior to commission hearings, I or some member of my staff sits down on an interactive team session with all the licensees of the state. That's access. Every single month we do that. The update I mentioned earlier was paper, now it's electronic. My legal staff, we have Briefly Legal, where they have an interactive engagement with consumers and licensees. That's via Microsoft Teams. It happens quarterly. So all of our lawyers are there. They field and answer questions. They have suggestions for licensees. I wanted them to be accessible. We have a YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is active. We had 2 interns that I brought on staff. They were, oh God, I don't want to screw this up. They were Gen Zs, I think is correct. They're younger than I. And so they created these vignettes on YouTube where we field the percentage of questions that come into the commission, and we use that to build videos to address those so that we don't have a high call volume of licensees asking the same question. They can go on YouTube, go to the channel, hit the query, there's your answer. We also have an active Facebook presence. Our Facebook page is active. Folks are out there. We get comments, complaints, and compliments twice sometimes based on our Facebook. As you stated earlier, our website is active. We have an educator newsletter that comes out from the Real Estate Commission's Education Division. We have a lot that happens in education. I have 869 real estate schools in the state of Alabama. That's a large population of just educators, and so we try to take every opportunity to engage those folks and make sure they have the information they need. Case in point, we have a new instructor orientation that's happening at the commission this morning. So my education director is not here because they're hosting new orientation for educators, and one of your peers is over there. Also, license and company outreach visits. I heard some conversation earlier about boots on the ground. We don't stove up in the castle here in Montgomery. We're out. I've been to most of your districts, if not all. I've talked to you as I visited there. I go to those districts. Not a surrogate. I go, I engage with those brokers. I answer questions. I get that feedback. I bring it back to our commissioners, and they sort of determine which direction we're going to go. My legal team does the same every month. They're on the road. They don't stove up here in Montgomery. We get out with the licensees so that we can understand what they're doing on a daily basis. And more importantly, what do we need to do here from a license law perspective to make certain that we're complementing the industry and not impeding it.
Now, you had a recent board meeting in Mobile.
Yes, ma'am.
So I did want to reach out and let y'all know that I was able to attend one of their commission meetings when I knew I was going to get the appointment. And so they're meeting around the state, so you don't necessarily have to come to Montgomery. So I compliment you on that.
Yes, ma'am.
And all of your newsletters, your videos, and everything are on that website. So like I said, I can't compliment you enough on what information you provide there. And like you said, your outreach is excellent.
Yes, ma'am. Our next road trip meeting will be in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama Law School. That is October 26th.
I also commend you just going around through the state. There's a lot of surrogates that come out and other people, but there's a lot of people, like you said, that stays in the castle. You don't. Obviously, you've been to Coleman. We've sat down and talked, went through some different issues that we both had, but I commend you for that. I rate each and every one of these that come through here at the end of each day just to see where we are. And I don't give out many A+, I guess you would say, but you've got a gold star for sure in your board and commission, so I just want to say good job.
Yes, sir. There's one final comment so that I don't talk myself out of a good report, but Representative Shedd had some questions yesterday about anonymous complaints. It is not a faction of our license law that we accept anonymous complaints. However, 94% of our complaints are from real estate licensees about real estate licensees. And so they don't want to own the complaint, but they do want us to investigate. Some come to fruition. Others are just folks trying to probably nudge their competition. And so we take them all in, and that's why the volume you see is about 5,000. That sorts down to about 1,200 or 1,300 actual complaints. And from those, we determine probable cause, and then we take it through due process and all that. But there's a lot of fluff in there. She moved my sign. He stole my client. He's meeting people on Sunday, and that's not right. And, you know, we have to sort all that out.
It looks to me like that keeps you pretty busy.
It does, but I would hate to.
I just am one of those that thinks that a person has a should have a right to know who's accusing them of something.
Yes, sir.
But, you know, I think I asked a question yesterday. Is there a good reason for doing that?
Yes, sir.
Is there? What is the reason? What is the good reason for
the reason
for anonymous complaints where one real estate person can tie up another real estate person's time and energy and expense possibly with a complaint that's anonymous? I mean,
some are valid. Some are valid. You
what's
may
the
have.
Percentage you think? And,
I would say,
and I'm not being critical.
Yes, sir.
Don't take it that way. I'm just.
I would say about half. About half are valid. You may have two licensees in one office. One licensee is aware of something that's happening. They don't want to put their name on it because that may be their boss, but they know that embezzlement's happening or commingling of funds or something like that. So they'll call us and just say, hey, oh, by the way, you might want to audit this company, but I don't want to sign any complaint form. We'll investigate an audit. Well, first of all, we'll do a preliminary investigation to see if anything valid is there. We'll conduct an audit, and then that audit may turn up, in fact, commingling of funds verified by this person who's there and they know. We have an audit cycle, but we don't audit every single company every single year. And so very often self-policing is one of those tools that licensees use to sort of self-correct themselves.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm not being critical. I'm just.
No, sir.
That's just my opinion.
Yes, sir.
Could you introduce your team? I know that you're the leader, but I know you got your board, but do you have some of your staff here that you could introduce in legal?
Yes, ma'am, I do. We have Serena Cronier. She's one of our attorneys. We poached her from CAM. We have Teresa Hoffman. She's my assistant state director. And Teresa has about 30 plus years of real estate regulatory experience. So I won't tell you all how old I am, but she is good.
All right. Thank y'all so much for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other further questions from the members?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. Excellent report.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all for your time.
Board of Respiratory Therapists. Okay, if you'll please introduce yourself and any of your board members and team members that you have with you.
Sure. That's a tough act to follow, but my name is Elizabeth Sheehan. I'm the director of the Respiratory Therapy Board, and today I'm joined by 4 of my 6 board members. We have our chair, Rhonda Hood, who as of 3 weeks ago is now Rhonda Hood Mask, and as of 3 weeks ago is coming from Mobile County rather than the Huntsville area. We also have Glenn Pippin, who's an RT board member, and he is from Birmingham. We have our new hospital CEO, Ashley Poole. She is from Scottsboro. And we have Kristen Johnson, our new consumer board member, who is from Homewood. Ed Goodwin could not be here today. He is teaching RT courses at Jacksonville State and thought it was a little early to call in sick. We also have our assistant director, Paula Little, Leslie Tomlin, our accounts manager, and Matt Bledsoe from the Attorney General's office. A little background, I took over for the board in September of 2020 after their relationship with Leadership Alliance dissolved in the fall of 2019. For 8 months, they had an emergency contract where that woman sort of handled the day-to-day. However, during that time, our board chair, Rhonda Hood, licensed every single respiratory therapist from December, or even before, probably about November 2019 until we came on. During that time, it was a pandemic. She also worked full-time at Helen Keller Hospital and used all of her spare hours working for the board as an unpaid board member. So she should be commended for those efforts. And this is really a boots on the ground board. They know everything about the day-to-day. They take their job very seriously. And it's really a fantastic board to work for. As far as our significant issues go, I hate to admit that we did not know that the consumer member had been added to our law. I don't know if I thought Legislative Services Agency might send a certified copy to us if our law changed, but we thought that this was our responsibility. So we have been drafting law to add a consumer board member. We were hoping to find somebody to sponsor it. We found out through this audit that the consumer member had been added, and it is my fault. As a practicing attorney, I should have known that laws evolve and should not have been using my paper copy and should have been checking the Allison website. So I will be monitoring bills this session and make sure respiratory therapy is not impacted in any way so that I'll be able to direct the board forward. But we do have our consumer board member now and are really grateful for that. Our second significant issue is regarding that the board members stated that there are issues facing our profession. We have a lack of subpoena power. This is an issue when sometimes we'll get a complaint that says a respiratory therapist may have been intoxicated at work, and an employee tells us about that. We ask the hospital, can we have that information so that we can have a due process hearing to revoke that license? And they say not without a subpoena. So we don't know factually if this is something that we can investigate. We have no information. We ask the licensee to provide us with information. They don't provide us with information. We have no evidence to carry on a hearing without knowing if there's just cause for a hearing. I thought that the hospitals would share information with a licensing board, but they will not. And that happens more times than not, that we cannot get any information from anybody without a subpoena. Our third significant issue was that were our licensees. Yes, there is a shortage of respiratory therapists in the state. Yes, travel respiratory therapists are coming into Alabama and they are taking our respiratory therapists out of Alabama because the travel companies are paying so much more. They can go work in Georgia, they can work in Tennessee, they can work anywhere in the country and make so much money on a 6-month, 8-month, 12-month contract than they'll be paid in a rural hospital in Alabama. The rural areas are suffering to keep workforce, but I know that's not just respiratory therapy. I think that's healthcare across the board. Ways that the licensing board can help with that, I'm not sure. We are licensing people within 24 hours of a completed application. We have stopped waiting on other states to send us their verifications. We go in and get those ourselves. We do the work on our end so that it is a seamless process for the respiratory therapists, so we are not the ones stopping the workforce in Alabama. During COVID, we worked with the Hospital Association because they had an opportunity to get a lot of travel RTs into Alabama when needed, and we worked 24 hours a day for several weeks to get every single person licensed to get them into the hospitals as quickly as possible. Other issues that are facing the board or the profession is that there are not enough schools. And I'm going to have our chair, Rhonda Hood, speak on that because she can tell you about the schools that are coming down the pike and that hopefully will be operational within the year.
Excuse me. Good morning. Okay, currently, we have respiratory schools in Wallace State at Hanceville, Shelton State in Tuscaloosa, Wallace Community College in Dothan, Jacksonville State University, Jefferson State Community College, Trent Home State Community College in Montgomery, and then our newest one is at the University of North Alabama in Florence, and they have just taken their first students this semester. We have the capacity at this time to take on 225 new respiratory students each year. Currently, we only have 142 that have applied and taken student positions, so we're at 63% occupancy at this time. We do have 3 new schools that are in the process of coming on board. Coastal Community College in Bay Minette will take their first students in January of 24. The University of West Alabama in Livingston will take their first students in the fall of 24. And then Calhoun Community College in Decatur has just started looking for a program director to open a new respiratory program. The society itself has started looking or working with the high schools to try to recruit, to make them more aware of respiratory as a profession so that we can start in the junior high and high school levels to recruit more professionals in.
All right, members, questions, comments?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You mentioned working with high schools. what type of efforts or outreach, or what are you doing specifically to?
We have reached out to the HOSA group, and we've been at their state meeting where they bring in healthcare students looking to move into the future. And then we have respiratory therapists throughout the state that will actually go into the high schools and speak and talk with their healthcare classes about opportunities in respiratory.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, so we were scheduled to take a break from 10:30 to 11. We've kind of blown through that. I'm of the opinion we need to kind of push on. If y'all want to take a 5-minute break, we can do that. But if not, let's just push ahead. Next up is going to be plumbers and gas fitters, which means we're now only 8 minutes behind rather than 38 minutes behind. So welcome, and if you will, let the board know who you are.
Good morning. My name is Jimmy Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of Plumbers and Gas Fitters Board. I have a lot of staff and board members and guests with me. If you don't mind, I'll introduce those as well.
Yes, sir. We'd appreciate that.
Okay. So behind me, I have Board Chairman, Mr. Scotty Winfrey. He is our professional engineer seat. I have former Board Chair Henry McCoy, who is in the journeyman gas fitter seat. I have Miss Janice Warren, who is in our consumer seat. Mr. Charles Owenby, master gas fitter seat. Mr. Philip Guthrie, master plumber. Mr. Isidore Gardner, journeyman plumber. And Mr. Bobby Bullock, who is our building official member. Also have board staff members, Ms. Kimberly Holyfield, executive operations manager. Ms. Kristen Ivy, who is our executive assistant. And then we use the Attorney General's office for legal counsel. We also have with us Ms. Tara Hetzel, who represents us. Guests have Mr. Jason Reed, Director of Regulatory Affairs for the Home Builders Association of Alabama. I have Mr. Danny Walker, who is the Political and Legislative Director for the South Central Pipe Trades. Mr. John Dillard, also with South Central. And Mr. Steve Wright with South Central. Also have Mr. Chuck Robinson behind me, who is the owner of All Star Plumbers. So I guess I'll start with a few details about the board. As you probably know already, we license, certify, and examine for 6 classifications: apprentice, journeyman, master, and medical gas. We maintain 4 exams, which are administered by various testing centers throughout the United States. That service is handled for us by Prove, with the exception of one location, which is J.F. Ingram College, and that examination is handled in-house there because the students there are incarcerated. So this is something that's been a really good thing. They learn the trade there. They take their examination, and some even end up going to work in those facilities as journeyman plumbers. And on consumer protection, we obviously don't receive a lot of complaints, and we think there's a reason behind that. We put a lot of effort into this on the front end. So the board employs 6 full-time compliance officers. These compliance officers have the responsibility of not only investigating consumer complaints, but they also do outreach. They communicate with our plumbers. They share news that the board may have. They talk to them about what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. And we think that makes a lot of difference. But one of our things we're proudest of is we have a full-time employee as of October of 2021. His job title is compliance officer, but he is permanently assigned to performing classes free of charge for the public and for our licensees. And these are classes that are geared toward teaching people how to understand the codes that they work under in these cities, and also the codes that they will have to use to take their examinations. So we've had a lot of success with that. So far, since we hired this person full-time in October, we've had approximately 1,500 people go through that class. That's more than 10% of our licensees who are taking advantage of that. But some recent law changes, 2022, gave the board the authority to require continuing education. We have not adopted administrative rules to do that yet, but like I said, we have been providing this at no charge to them to those who are willing to attend. The 2022 law change also did something else, and this is a big workforce development issue as far as I'm concerned. We have a lot of people who take these examinations who have some disability of a sort that will not allow them to pass a written exam. We now have an option for them so that they are not stuck at this apprentice level. As a matter of fact, at our board meeting today, later today at 2 p.m., we'll hear from a group that is proposing a hands-on test for these types of situations, and we think that's going to make a big difference in some of these guys' outlook on staying in the trade. Let's see. What else have I not covered? Also wanted to say about our classes. Those are posted on our Facebook page, on our website. We also post our news and newsletters on our website. Some of the discussion that I heard, or some of the documentation that I read, one or the other, there was concern about how some of this information got out to licensees when there were changes. We do all calls, and when we do these all calls, or post calls as they're called, we also direct them to our website where they'll find the latest news or even some older news. So we do try to get outreach in that manner. Let's see. One of the other things we do for consumers is that we post tips for hiring contractors on our website. That we think that's one of the ways that they could protect themselves, and we can help them protect themselves, is kind of help them to go in the right direction when it comes to, what they may be doing wrong that caused this guy to take, the almost 75% of the money and never come back. So we do provide tips, and I guess beyond that, before I ask about questions, I know there was a concern yesterday in the work session about the availability of these plumbing training programs. So I sent Ms. Hutchison some information last night, and as you've probably seen that information by now, but there are many of these training classes in Alabama. I did list one with her that I've realized is no longer in existence. That's Bishop State. That one does not exist anymore. And but there are many of those, and they're not just 2-year colleges. They're private companies that perform this type of work. And as I mentioned to her, there are also 3 high schools in Alabama that have programs that when these students, if they successfully complete this plumbing program, they are instantly able to test for a journeyman certification. And that's a big deal. That's a supervisory role. So we do have many of those, and I guess if I don't guess I have anything else. If y'all have questions for me.
So quick jump in as a brag on page 4 of the report. The thing that I really like seeing here on unused funds. If it gets above 25% of your annual budget, it's dumped into the Home Builders Foundation for classroom training tools. And I'm a big fan of that. Plus it's a lower number. It's you keep it moving. How are you you? I see you have 15,000 licensees. How are you on regards to demand? I mean, do you have enough? Are you shorthanded statewide, or how are you on that?
That's the number one thing we hear is we don't have enough workers, and that's the reason that we felt like this doesn't just tie into workforce development, but it ties into consumers. We're helping protect consumers when we make sure that we can get enough licensees. Unavailability of workers to do this work is as much a problem as anything.
Well, you've shown that to be your priority because you're dumping money back into helping young ones get into the workforce. So I commend you for that. I'm glad to see it.
Well, and like I said, I think that's true that we are dedicated to that, and we, like I said, we have a full-time employee that is trying to keep these guys from getting stagnant and getting tired of it and moving on to something else. So that. We don't, getting people into this, you can get someone in a classroom, but sometimes when they find out that it's going to take them a little while to work their way up, it's microwave society we have, that people want this now. And so we're trying to do all we can to help them get there as fast as possible. So.
Representative Simpson.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, and I appreciate your board members, I appreciate you guys are doing a good job, but it looks like in the past we've had a significant issue with just the makeup of the board as far as how the vacancies are done. It looks like, if I'm calculating right, you have 6 members that expire by October 1st, which is about time to make sure those vacancies are posted.
Yes.
And then one that expired in 2020. My only kind of thing that I would like to be looking out for as we watch this process go along, would like to see some geographic diversity during your new appointments. I understand that has to go through the Senate approval. I get all. I'm not blaming you for the not being there, but what I am saying is, if you can show some geographic diversity in your new appointments as the board comes together again with all of these appointments, I'd like to see somebody from.
So if I may, we had an individual on the board out of Mobile during the, I guess when I came on the board I think it was October 2017, took over officially as the director, January of 18. At that time, we had a representative from Mobile on the board, and because of his work schedule, he was unable to attend more than he was able to be there. So when he left, we began calling specifically people in that Mobile, Baldwin County area to get some folks in South Alabama. And I'll just be honest, it's just a tough sell telling somebody that you're going to pay them $200, a plumber, $200 to be off work all day for meetings.
I completely understand that, but I've also heard you say you've closed down the training operation at Bishop State. It's not, that's the one not offered, right? That's what you said?
Well, right. We didn't close it down. They discontinued that at some point.
But see, the pattern starts to build up of, wait a second, we don't have representation from Mobile or Baldwin County. Now all of a sudden we don't have that training in Mobile or Baldwin County. That's just what I'm trying to look out for, is if you can look at the south end of the state when you have these next 7 appointments that you have on your board, if you can just kind of give some geographic diversity for us, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely, we'll try.
Senator Gudger.
It said that money hadn't been transferred over the 25%, but which bothers me a little bit. But then I go back to what you were just saying about continuing education. It says the board, you can adopt new rules and regulations to be able to do continuing education, but you do that at no charge. I just want to say good job. I mean, that's where we want the money and the excess funds to go back to, is to the consumer, right?
Right.
They're the ones paying it. Make sure you have efficient operations and take care of your overhead. But at the same point, give it back to the consumer with these unused funds. So I just want to say good job.
Thank you.
Representative Shea.
I'm always concerned about a number of situations where with our boards and trying to prevent competition, but it looks like you're certainly
We're going the opposite way.
Competition. So I commend you on that. And would you? I really like what you said about the hands-on thing that you're trying. That's something that I hope others will look at as well. In a lot of situations. Would you share with us? I mean, not right now, but after the meeting or next week or sometime, the 3 high schools that you talked about that are doing that, so we can try to get others to do that as well.
Absolutely. I can do
Thank you for what you're doing, all of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to commend you on your website. It does seem to be rather dynamic and have some training opportunities offered on there. I would just ask that you more prominently display stuff about needing board members in geographical areas. That would be a good spot to offer it. But otherwise, looks like y'all have a very good website that has plenty of information and it's easy to use.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sir, I asked a question yesterday. I noticed it says J.F. Ingram State Technical is the only place that tests or they can take a test. But what other schools, be it community colleges or whatever, do you partner with? Because they do teach
So
in these subject areas. So what other?
So I was just going to say, the way this kind of works, there are many, and I sent a list to Ms. Hutchison, and I think one of those that I was assuming was still operating, Bishop State, is no more. We verified that this morning, and I may have even left out a few. But what happened was the board several years ago entered into an agreement with the state's 2-year college system that when they complete one of these approved plumbing courses, that it's going to take off 1 year off of that 2-year required working apprenticeship. So if you've got a student who is working for a plumber and taking this apprenticeship program, and he holds our apprentice registration this entire time, he's basically in a year's time able to take this journeyman exam, which I had mentioned before is a significant step up in pay, responsibility. So we don't actually have involvement directly with each of these programs, whether they continue to exist or not. They kind of ebb and flow, but we are seeing more private companies getting into this, and a couple of them that we've approved lately seem to be very efficient in what they are doing and getting a lot of attention from applicants.
And Ms. Thomas just forwarded that email that we'd received from Mr. Morgan to each of y'all, so y'all should have that list that he provided. So, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments?
You had some issues about not having Senate confirmations, and that in the 23 session you went through several attempts to get that done.
I did.
We want to help where we're holding up. So not only do we want to critique your organization, we're also trying to make sure that the legislature is just as responsive to our consumers. So can you elaborate a little bit more about how that's been held up?
Yes. So my understanding of what happened, I wasn't sure if I had an obligation to try to shout and make this happen, but a week prior to the legislative session, I reached out to Miss Emily Moore, the governor's office. I think she's assistant to the appointments director, and I told her that I really needed to get these confirmed as soon as possible because these were 2 seats that were just added with the 2022 law change. So we got those appointed very quickly. Emailed those to Ms. Moore. She said she would get those out there and have no reason to believe that that she would mislead me, but she said that would happen, and so we kept following the committee meetings. Never did see any of ours on the agenda, so I reached out to her again, and this was it was getting down maybe the last month or so of the session, and it had still not happened. So like I said, I reached out to her again, and she said she would try to get those on there, and we just never saw it happen.
Who was the sponsors of your 2022 legislation that created those positions?
Let's see. I believe there were several co-sponsors of that. Where's Jason Reed. He is outside. So that was something that we worked with the Home Builders Association on, and I think they sought out the sponsors. I would apologize. I cannot tell you who all the sponsors.
No, and that's what I was just trying to dig down a little further, because instead of the governor's office, I would have reached out. I'm just kind of giving some helpful hints for the future to reach out to your Senate sponsors or anybody that voted for that bill and ask for them to be an advocate and find out what exactly is going on. I don't know what was going on. We have one member of the Senate Confirmations Committees here that might help us with that. I'll yield my time.
The chairman sets the agenda. We didn't turn it down.
Exactly.
But that is a very good point. That would have been logical. I just was unaware that I needed to push it along, and I should have probably done that.
Well, and that's the reason we only ask, is a lot of times if they're unaware that something is timely like that, I know that they want to help just as much. Just like we're critiquing, we want to make sure that we're responsive. And I say the Senate wants to be responsive just like the House. So I'm not picking on them. I'm just trying to figure out where we might be failing. I love you. You know that. I'm losing my girlfriend status. I know. Anyway, I'd give you that helpful hint, but then reach out to us, the Sunset. If you can't get those that's some of the things that we want to do. And if there's anything in government on the oversight part, we want to be a part of that solution for you.
Right.
So even if you have to, we've got it on their attention meter right now. We've got 2 members, did you say? Excellent.
I think so.
All right, I'll yield my time. Thank you, sir.
All right. Good points.
I'm sorry. I was just informed Rex Reynolds was the main sponsor of that.
He was very, very busy with his new chairmanship with the budget, so I can get how that fell off. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments, members? All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is real estate appraisers. Good morning.
Good morning. It's still morning?
It's still morning. We barely got it. If you would introduce us and introduce yourself to us, and then tell us, who's here with you, maybe board members or staff as well.
I'm Lisa Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of the Real Estate Appraisers Board. With me, I have our chairman, Chad Anderson. He is from Mobile, and he is a certified residential appraiser. Roger Ball, he's from our, what district? 6th district, and he's a certified general appraiser. Next to him is Robert Butler, and he's from our 7th district, and he is a certified residential appraiser. Melanie Hoosh is from our 3rd district, and she is a certified general appraiser. And then I have our legal counsel, Neva Conway.
Thank you. If you wouldn't, I hope you had an opportunity yesterday to listen to some of the comments or questions that were posed yesterday. And if you wouldn't mind, just kind of tell us about the board and anything you think we ought to know. And if you would address, some of those questions or comments, as well as any of the findings that were.
Well, our board, we license and regulate real estate appraisers and register appraisal management companies. We have approximately 1,500 appraisers that we regulate, and we approve education, discipline, and then we have approximately 110 appraisal management companies that we register. We approve appraisal education and instructors. I've been with the board for now 17 years. As director of 17 years, I've been with the board going on 29. So I've been here a little while. And as far as the significant items, the first significant item was that our complainants or licensees were not being notified of the results of the board. of their investigation, and we did a little background check on Ms. Conway. She she could recognize some of those issues, and she researched the files, and we had, and I believe Ms. Thomas said yesterday, we had responded to our complainants and our licensees. So, and then the RDA issue, that was a sort of miscommunication. My secretary did file the 2022 RDA. She completed the form, sent it over, and then archives, they wanted her to complete another form, and that kind of got lost in translation. But it is filed now, and she has a tickler to remind her when to do it. So we've hopefully gotten that taken care of.
Okay. Members, any questions?
So what type of complaints are you typically getting? Is this just, somebody saying he or she didn't appraise my property for as much as it should be, or is it one appraiser complaining against another?
Sometimes both. Neva, would you like to speak to this?
I'll be glad to. Good morning. I'm Neva Conway. I'm the board's attorney, and I manage the legal compliance portion of the board. We take complaints from just the general public for any reason about an appraiser, but a lot of the complaints come from lenders. A lot of complaints but more complaints come from consumers who disagree with the value. We don't take up, we don't investigate a pure value question, but so many of them say, well, they missed features about my property. They said I didn't have but one bedroom. I've got 6. I mean, that's a real exaggeration, but property characteristics are something that they point out to us. And we do, we have, our board literally reviews every single complaint that we receive. And they are the professional eyes on it to make it a professional determination about whether the appraiser was adequately carrying out their job.
Thank you.
Professional question. Page 4 has 1,513 licensed, licensees. Mm-hmm. Is that enough for Alabama? Or are there some operating that aren't licensed, do you think? Or that just doesn't seem like many to me.
I can tell you it takes me too long to get an appraisal.
So it's not enough.
So it's not enough.
Right.
Well, we do not deal with unlicensed appraisers. It's mandatory in Alabama for you to have a license. So, no, we would love more.
Yeah.
And we have them coming in as trainees. They work under a certified appraiser, and within the last 2 years, we've had around 109 trainees come into the system. So,
how long before they can be a licensed operating?
Well,
appraiser?
they can work, but now as a trainee, but they have to work under a mentor who is a certified license. And it just depends. It could be 24 months. And they have to have experience hours as well. So, in order to upgrade to a different classification.
Well, same thing that we've discussed in here with others. The unobligated cash balance was a little over $2 million, and in the report we have, it just says that you retain the funds, and I get that. That's that's normal. But I would, and I think we would like to see that those funds are being reinvested back into the profession in some kind of way, whether it be to bring more people on board, find ways to get more people engaged in it, to help them with whatever education they got to have, just something to get that industry going again, or not going again, but invested back into it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to conversations earlier this morning, and there is a good idea to advertise on your website, and our board will discuss this, and we will put thought into it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I've looked at your website. It's dynamic. You can go back into 2008 on disciplinary hearings. So if you ever want to, I think you've got a lot of good information on here and readily available to the consumers as well as your licensees. So
Thank you.
I compliment you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We don't need to belabor it here, but I would like to catch y'all outside about something that's not y'all's fault, but I think you'll like what I want to do about some people testifying that shouldn't be testifying because they're not appraisers.
Okay. Okay. Yes, we would be interested to hear this.
So we don't have any schools now in Alabama
that offer the courses, the appraisal courses. We don't have any colleges, but we do have Appraisal Institute that they do hold courses in Alabama, and the majority of our providers and our courses are online. After COVID came, we all suffered through COVID. Most of the providers started going online, and a lot of our appraisers like that, and they can travel to other states if they want that classroom setting. They can travel to other states and go to these courses.
Second question. On page 25, the first on number 5, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make? Complainant number 1 talked about a VA appraiser, and I understand sometimes people just don't like what they got and all, but that looks like a pretty serious thing, and I'm sure that you looked into that, and one accusation there is that that's happened to a lot of veterans. So it bothers me if veterans are being mistreated.
You're on
Anybody,
page 25?
but especially our veterans.
No, we
Page 25, under item number 5, complainant number 1.
I don't see that.
He's talking about right here.
Oh,
in the
okay.
Extra comments.
I don't know if they contacted the board, but if they would contact us, we would definitely check into it.
If you would look into that one,
Absolutely.
if you have the ability.
If we have the
to,
ability, I
follow
definitely
up, I
will.
would think somebody has.
The complainant was sent a survey based on a list of complainants provided to us, so they must have filed it with the board.
Okay.
I mean,
You remember that?
They're saying that situation happens to a lot of veterans, so I would like that followed up on it.
Okay, definitely.
And you have one interesting situation with your legal services sharing with other boards. I mean, that's a pretty neat concept. I like that.
Well, good. Thank you. Eva?
It must be in demand.
But it's very interesting to represent the various boards. It's all administrative law, but they all do different things, and so I get to be exposed to a lot of different industries.
We keep her busy.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to say one thing.
Yes, sir.
On the 100 that were sent out on these surveys, as far as the complainants, this is kind of a high number that had turned this back in afterwards. And so just looking at it, most of these are saying, hey, they didn't feel like they were, I guess you would say, listened to as closely as they needed to. Would you just pay close attention to that? I'm making a note on it for the next time that you're in front of us to just look at that particular section and making sure we focus on those complainants if they're there. Everything else was great.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Next, we've got the Board of Social Work Examiners. Good morning, Steele.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having us here.
Being here. You could introduce everybody with you today, board members and staff and so forth, and then kind of give us a little bit about your organization and then, address any of the concerns that you may have heard yesterday.
Sure. I'm Rachel Dickinson. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board of Examiners, Social Work Examiners. And with me, I have Kylie Montfield, our chair. She's from District 2 here in Montgomery. And also board member Wendy Peak. She's from District 6 in Birmingham. And our board attorney, Ellen Leonard. Our board is made up of 7 members, all based off congressional districts. And we do have all positions filled right now. I'm trying to think. 4 LICSWs, 2 LMSWs, and 1 LBSW make up our board. Just posted that we have 3 current positions that are open. That can be found on our website. It's going to be in our newsletter as well, and it's on the Secretary of State's website. But with regard to significant issues, the first one obviously is completely my fault. It was unintentional, and it was simply an oversight. We passed the legislation in 2021. I filed the first set of paperwork with LSA. We had it approved at the board, and then I did not file the remaining paperwork with LSA. As soon as we were notified about this, I immediately stopped charging the fees that we were supposed to be charging. So those haven't been charged since that's been done. I have filed the paperwork with LSA to make up for this. I spoke with Jennifer Haygood in that office, and she said had to start the whole process over again, which I think you asked yesterday. Right. And we did. So that's been filed. So it's going to be on our website. The comment period's back open again for this. And so that should be taken care of by November. So
do you know what dollar amount, generally speaking, was collected that
yes,
should not have been?
About a total of $35,000.
Yeah.
The biggest one was in our supervisor fee because it was our newest rule, and it's $50 for the registration. And we have about 500 supervisors, so they have been charged that. And then the lapse cycle fee was between $9,000 and $10,000. So that's the total. We haven't discussed going back retroactive. That's something I haven't brought up to the board, but can be addressed at our September meeting. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then the prior finding from 2021 was, let me go back to that. Oh, about not filing the 45 days in advance. I did it 30. The new one that I just filed August 1st, I did 60 days in advance to take care of all of that. So hopefully that won't be on the next one. That should take care of that for sure. And again, that is in our website and newsletter. And then our last significant issue was a prior one from 2019. And it is regarding the complaints and how they're unhappy with our findings. I'm not sure really how to make that better because social workers have a really tough job and tough decisions to make. And it's unfortunate sometimes how that affects the complainant. When our complaints come in from DHR, those social workers are following those orders and they just don't always like the result. So that's kind of hard for us, I think, with some of these decisions they have to make. But it is something we always want to look at, and we take very seriously all the complaints that come in.
I will say, in my dealings with social workers, specifically, I guess, at DHR, it is a very difficult profession. So you're expected to hear the complaints of individuals, try to work through those problems with them. And it's not an 8 to 5 job. You go home at the end of the day and you've got a lot of that still stored up here. How can I help? How did I help? What could I have done different? Are they going to react to the message or the information that I gave them to try to follow through with that? So I admire the profession. Certainly my side note, aunt is in the Social Work Hall of Fame, Dr. Susan Barfoot, and passed away a couple of years ago. But so I have a love for social workers. So,
thank you.
Members, any questions or comments?
I just have a comment. I'm noticing that on page 18 that a number of your respondents, when they asked about being informed, and I think that seemingly you all are doing a very good job through using the mechanisms of emails and the Facebooks and things like that. So you're putting the information out, and they are receiving it.
Yes, ma'am. We do email blast whenever we have new information going out with the new bill that was just passed. And, Senator Coleman Madison, you were part of that as well. all the LICSWs will be updated by email with all what they need to do next. It's also going to be in our newsletters. It's on our website. So I think we try to keep everyone updated the best we can.
The only other thing is that I don't know, this was just one respondent on 14 that mentioned that. And I don't know if things are explained, maybe it's just put it out there, but simply because something is put out there, maybe everybody interprets things differently.
Absolutely.
And so maybe it just needs to be explained if there's a new policy or procedure change.
Yes, ma'am. And we're also looking at we're working with state personnel to set up a jurisprudence exam for licensees so that they can come in, watch a video on our website, and learn more about our rules and regulations so that they know. And hopefully that'll head off any more complaints as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say I've looked at your website. It looks like y'all keep it up to date. So thank you for that. It's good for the consumers and for your licensees.
Thank you.
You have a plan for the unused funds? It says it's retained at the end of each year. What do y'all have a plan for those unused funds, or what do you use those for?
We don't, but yesterday when I was listening, I thought that I didn't think of that idea. So it will be brought up at the next board meeting. As long as we have statutory authority to use those funds in certain ways, that's absolutely something we want to look at.
Obviously, those are paid by the consumers, the licensees, and so any way we can
Yes.
get that back to them is what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all. We're starting to cut it. All right. Very last one of the day, Board of Auctioneers. Okay. Mm. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Keith Warren. I'm the Director of the State Board of Auctioneers. I'd like to go ahead and start with introducing my board members. I have Mr. Mike Fisher, who is the board chair from 4th Congressional District. Mr. Chad Curvin, who is the vice chair from the 3rd Congressional District. Mr. J.D. Gray from the 2nd Congressional District. Mr. Chip Pierce, who was in Congressional District 6, who is now in Congressional District 1. We have issues with finding people in those categories. His business is in Alabaster. He served in Congressional District 6, and the governor's office worked with us for him to transfer his 2nd term to Congressional District 1. And then we have Mr. Scott Barnes from here and filling the Congressional District 6 position.
Welcome to Baldwin County.
Mr. Chair.
So I did like that. We did not move Alabaster yesterday, so I apologize for that. Mr. Keith McDaniel from the 5th Congressional District, he is not here. He had an auction booked today, so he was unable to attend. We have Miss Angela Morgan from the 7th Congressional District. We have Mr. Scott Barnes, who is the new representative from Congressional District 6. And we have Mr. Randall Grissett, who is our consumer at large.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think we had a request from Representative Simpson yesterday that we can't do this report unless you use it as an auctioneer the whole time. Anyway.
Now, I'm not an auctioneer. They're ready to change. I prepped them last night.
That is so good. Senator Randy Price, obviously is an auctioneer.
Yes, sir, he is.
On the floor and did that, and everybody had a good time with it. We appreciate you gentlemen being here. Thank you.
So before I dive into the report, I want to hit some highlights of some things from yesterday's conversation and some new items that are going on with the board and the local state association as well. One of the things that we recently participated in, Troy University Dothan campus has the only Alabama auction school. Both myself and Mr. Chip Pierce were there at their class this year in Dothan. They had 12 new apprentice students, and that was great because we struggle with apprentice licenses as well. And then on Sunday afternoon when I was there were 20-something licensed auctioneers that were gaining their continuing education that day. So in meeting with them, that's something that we are going to now continue participating in annually for their school, but Troy does do that, and they do a great job. And that school consists of 85 hours of auction instruction, which is outlined in our statute and rules, consisting of auctioneering history and ethics, auction and commercial law, uniform commercial code, clerking and cashiers, advertising and auction, and site preparation and restoration. We also have the Alabama Auctioneers Association is very active in providing continuing education. I don't want to use the word sponsor, but we purchase and provide advertising to all licensed auctioneers. So they provide for free. If we're paying for it, they can't charge a fee for a continuing education class. So but between the two entities, they offer a free class every year for licensed auctioneers. So that's one of the things. And we have legislation, of course, coming, and we want to be able to have more of an educational grant component in our statute to be able to support those organizations that provide education. And so that would be a way that we would be using our fund balance as well and participating and helping those organizations that provide this education to our licensees. The examination results, I know that was a question yesterday. So in the last 4 years, we have had 74 auctioneers take the examination. 63 of those passed and 11 failed. Out of the 81 apprentice examinations that were administered, 62 passed and 19 failed. And so we will continue to have that information available in the audit or to you at any time. We did update the website recently last year and launched it. One of the components that's not there that we will be adding is news, where we add our newsletters that we just started back publishing summer of 2023. I have copies of those of you that did not receive it. Yes, ma'am.
You need to update it to say that Troy is an approved school. One of your frequently asked questions, does the board maintain a list of schools with offer the required curriculum? I think you should add Troy, because on this you say no, it does not.
Yes, ma'am. So that is already pending over there and under the news section as well. And we're going to highlight Troy University as our Alabama Auctioneer School.
And I appreciate the fact that you're adding the newsletter and more stuff to your website. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. There's also the public records component at the bottom. We have historical minutes on there, and those are divided up by years as well. We publish all meeting notices, proposed rule changes, proposed legislation, all of that information on our website. And like I said, we have started back the newsletter. We plan to publish that quarterly. That will also be available on the website as well. So we keep our licensees up to date as possible. I also like the fact that the auditors are going back and looking at those questions where we don't communicate or a complainant hasn't been responded to. 90% of the time, there's going to be an unhappy party in the complaint process. So I do like how we're all making sure that those are communicated with and those questions are answered. So as far as the finding, you can see that that has been discussed earlier today. That action has been immediately suspended. I have talked with Dr. Baxter at the Comptroller's office on when she would like for those invoices to be submitted. And so we have a process in place for that. So that was corrected immediately once that was brought to our attention.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Warren, is this, so far, I think this is the only issue that we've seen with one of your boards. We've seen that same issue with other boards. Can you tell me why that this board, the payments were made or asked for, those requests were submitted? Other information we had that Stars had always done that and y'all were following through on what?
Historically, that has always been the way that it's been submitted because there's not a guaranteed payment date, and that's always been allowed, but we have stopped that. So in my conversation with Dr. Baxter, we will not submit any invoices until the first day of the following month after the services are rendered. That is just a long time practice, and so it's been corrected, and so you won't see that again in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The most important topic I heard yesterday was about the online auctions. I'm going to give you some information and I'm going to turn it over to our board chair. Obviously, we still have work to do. So in our 2021 legislation, we removed the two words that were referenced in the 2 or 3 previous Attorney General's opinions that was a barrier in us being able to regulate online auctions, and that was public outcry. So in their opinion, that was live in-person auctions only. We removed those 2 words, but apparently we need to do some more defining of auction business, and auction practice in order to have a clear understanding. So we're aware that there is a new Attorney General's opinion that has been requested. And so we are on standby, but let me make this point. No one has been disciplined. No one has been fined. When we changed this, we took a very proactive stance in trying to get the information out there about the law change. We have worked with different entities that were not licensed previously, the legal counsel and I. When we get questions, we understand that there's been a law change. Do I now come under the jurisdiction of your board? We review each of those individually, and about right now, 50-50 is where the attorney will say, no, they do not. You can continue your operations, or it does look like that you need to fall under our jurisdiction. But we have received complaints, but we have not disciplined anyone or fined anyone. So we're taking a proactive stance, but apparently we have more work to do. The only state that is perfectly clear in their regulation on online or internet auction is the state of Ohio. And so we are looking at those laws and regulations closely as we're preparing legislation for the upcoming session. So we are proactively discussing this at every meeting. But like I said, we have not disciplined anyone because we know there are still gray areas when it comes to this. And so at this time, I'm going to go, unless you have any other questions of me.
Let me just make a comment along those lines. And you referenced we referenced yesterday, Senator Schofield sent a letter regarding that very issue. I think you're right. We got some information yesterday that there was a pending Attorney General's opinion that would be coming out, whether that's a week or 6 months from now, I don't know. But it seems to me that if there is some potential confusion about the statute itself and what the board can do to regulate those folks, that if the position that you're taking now is that we're not punishing them, we're not fining them, we're not, it's not creating an issue for them, I would just ask that that continue to be the position until or unless either the Attorney General's opinion comes out and says you do have the authority to regulate them, or if the Attorney General's opinion does not say that, and if the law does change through the legislative process, then I would just ask you to do that. I've heard not only from Senator Schofield, but certainly from the Lieutenant Governor's office, issues that, that same issue that concern them both. I think maybe for constituents in their area and around the state, certainly so.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I did speak with Senator Schofield back in July about that. And so, but we do not have a copy of that letter, but we are only in the mode of compliance and not disciplinary on that until there's firm ground on where we know they should or should not be licensed when they are. And we have several auctioneers that not only do live in-person auctions, but they do simulcasting as well. So they have their online component to their live auction as well. So we have a well-versed group of being able to provide more information and answer your questions where it comes to where we feel like an online auction should come up under our jurisdiction. And it's only because of the complaint process. I know the last time we were here for Sunset, we told the story about a complainant of a gentleman that was out of state but purchased a vehicle online. It was a 1965 Mustang. And so when he went and went for delivery, it was like a Pinto. So there's some discrepancies there, but we were not able to assist him, of course, as we didn't have jurisdiction over there. But we have several stories about that. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fisher, unless you have any other questions about the report from me, but I can always come back as well. So,
members, any questions while Mr. Warren's up there?
Mine's the level of confusion on Dixie, your page 7, where it references the code that says it does not constitute an auction business if they do not involve bid calling. And I'm not sure why, maybe something new's come up that why it's an issue now, because I'm in the dark on it.
I think that AG opinion was from 2018.
Okay.
And then the law since changed to take those wording out, so that I think there's some uncertainty as to whether or not.
Okay, that's why I was.
So that statute is not referenced in the audit report. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's the confusion.
Okay.
Mr. Fisher.
I'm Mike Fisher, and I'm chair of the State Board of Auctioneers. And I wanted to just explain why this law even came about. Okay, why us as a board started discussing this law and started trying to get this new legislation passed. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, every auctioneer used a microphone. They got up on a stand, they got a microphone, and they cried the bid. And when we started our auction law in the 70s, we said, okay, you got to be bonded, you have to be licensed, you got to be insured, because there are times where, as an auctioneer, I may be conducting an auction for a family, and everything that I'm selling is every dollar they have. It's for an estate, it's going to be split, it may be for a widow, and I may go sell $200,000 worth of equipment and everything else, but this widow has no money. She doesn't have a dollar, okay? So now people pay me, they pay the auction company, I may have $100,000 in cash and $100,000 in checks, okay? I'm bonded, I'm licensed, I have escrow accounts, I am held accountable. I'm held under our state laws on what I have to do. I can't take $1 in commissions or compensations until my client is made whole. Those are just our laws. Well, today, an online bidding platform is just yesterday's microphone. Okay? We didn't do this law to try to regulate a bidding platform, the technology. Today's an online platform is nothing more than a microphone. Okay? What we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure, because probably 75% of the auctions conducted in the state now they're online. They're online only auctions. They're simulcast, they're online. So we've got so many new people getting into the business that they don't have to have escrow accounts. They don't have to have a bond. And in fact, until we got this law passed, we had no jurisdiction to regulate them. So when Aunt May called and said somebody just walked off with $100,000, we'd have to tell them, sorry, we can't help you. It's outside of our jurisdiction. So the reason for bringing this about was straight for consumer protection, not only on the seller side for Aunt May, but for the people that bought the Mustang when they turned out there's no such thing. The Mustang didn't exist. They were just an online company. There's nothing we could do as a board to assist that buyer. So that's why we brought this law about, was for consumer protection on the buyer and seller side. So, sitting out here, I've listened to several of the boards that came in and they were discussing online. Everything is going online. I can go online and I can get a mortgage and never talk to anybody. I can go online, I can upload my financials, I can do a mortgage application, I can do that 100% and never talk to a soul. If I want to go buy some term life insurance, I can jump online, I can do the same thing and never talk to a human. But a mortgage broker, whether they're doing it online or live, in person, still has to have a license. An insurance salesman still has to have a license. Real estate agents, you will see real estate's going to start being sold online. But all states still consider protecting the consumer and not saying just because you do it online that you should be treated any differently. And that's all we're doing. That was the intent of our law, was to make sure that all consumers are under the same protection, that Aunt May's $100,000 just don't walk off to Kansas and she has no help from the state board, and we have no law that has any teeth. I myself, I've been a licensed auctioneer for 24 years. I used to do nothing but live auctions. Now I only do online auctions. I may do a live auction once every 2 or 3 years. But because I'm licensed, I'm bonded, I fall all under the jurisdiction. Whether I'm doing it live or online, I fall under the jurisdiction of our law because I'm a licensed auctioneer. So all we've been trying to do is there's been so many people jumping into this business that don't have contracts with clients. They don't have bonds. Their client and their customer have zero protection. Zero protection under our old law. So that was the whole purpose of drafting this law, and it's the whole reason why we've been fighting for this law. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Yes, Senator Coleman Madison.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank you for that explanation because I was wondering, trying to figure out in my mind, how does this all work together? And of course, and I can appreciate the fact that someone that is a licensed auctioneer seeing the problem and being a part of the solution, and in particular wanting to protect consumers, because as state legislators, when something happens, they figure, well, or if people are operating, they say, well, it's got to be a state that allows, a regulation or something that allows them to do that. And when it doesn't happen in this situation, and there is no law or no protection, but I understand the AG is still dealing with this and will come with an opinion. What I wanted to ask, though, is how does this work? Because if it's, and since you're already in it, do you just do auctions within the state? You are licensed in Alabama. Or is it anywhere, anybody anywhere can go online? And how is that regulated? How would the state regulate it if it's somebody, well, all 50 states is open? How does it work?
So basically what it comes down to is where the assets are located. Okay, so if I'm doing an auction and all the assets are located in Gadsden, Alabama or Birmingham, and it's an online auction, okay, but my assets are located in this state, then it's falling under this state's jurisdiction. I'm licensed in all the Southeast states. But if I go to Mississippi to do an online only auction in Mississippi, I'm falling under 100% of their guidelines and laws. Okay, because that's where the assets are located. So that's typically what it is. Because you're selling assets, they have to be located somewhere.
I got you, where the property is.
Yeah.
So then people would go to whatever attorney general's office or whatever it is for.
They would actually go to that state board because all the states in the Southeast have a state board. They would go to that state board if they had a problem with something that I did, whether they're my client or whether they're a customer or buyer. If they had a problem, their first line of defense is to file a complaint with the state board.
How many states have laws that regulate?
About half of the states have boards. Little over half the states
That regulate online auctioning?
No, so about half of some states do not even have auction boards. They don't have any licensing law whatsoever. They have no laws. So those states fall under UCC. There's some UCC guidelines that are specifically geared to auctions, but it's very few. But they fall under UCC, and then a complainant's only course of action there is to file a lawsuit.
So in this case, since we don't have anything in place, it's nothing that can be done to regulate it when the auction is here in the state of Alabama.
So we do for live auctions, but that's the whole issue is that
not
the
online
only
auction.
Yeah, not on. Well, we do have a law that is in place. We're just waiting for the Attorney General's opinion on whether it has enough teeth or not, or if we need to go back to the drawing board to revamp that law and take it back to get through the legislative process.
Okay.
Sure. This was addressed before. I apologize. Is there any exception for to a business or an individual selling their own property by auction? There
is. Under our current law, there is an exception for somebody to sell their own goods unless that is a normal course of business, and that is where their income's coming from. And really and truly, for that person, it is all about the buyer consumer. Okay, because now a person, I could be buying items, I'm selling my own items, so I really don't have a client. I don't have a contract with my seller. Okay, so I don't have a client that I have fiduciary responsibilities to. My customer is a buyer. Okay, so, but if I sell somebody an item that doesn't work and I've misrepresented it and told them it did work, and you drive to the auction location and you pick up this item for $300 and you get home and it doesn't work. What we're talking about here, if there was an exemption for that person that owns their own items, but that's all they're doing is selling them every week, their only course of action is to go hire an attorney and sue that individual. They would not be able to file a complaint with the state board if that was an exemption for somebody that does it as a normal course of business. So that's why there is an exemption if you have 14 items and you would like to put them on an online platform, or you want to have a live auction and you want to do the auction yourself. You have every right to do that. You do not fall under our jurisdiction. If you started doing it every single weekend at your house and you were selling your own goods, but you were buying tractor trailer loads of stuff, we would consider that you fall under our jurisdiction, because now we want to protect those people that are buying from you.
Okay.
And that's the way our current law is currently written.
Members, any other questions, comments? Senator Gudger.
I've got one for Mr. Warren, if I can tell him anyway, but I'd like for you to come back forward. We talked to Claire Olson, said the same thing. I just want to make this statement. That's all. It's really not questions, but obviously you're in this business as a third-party contract, right? You have location, investigators, everybody on your team, which is a large team. But I'm just making sure that this board relays the same information, but on the third-party contracts for all of these, from now until the next 4 years. For any board, agency, or commission, obviously y'all are knowledgeable, competent, and then through your group and through your experience, you're considered an expert, correct, in all of this. So having said that anyway, I myself, and I assume this board, is just going to make sure that we hold you and your Warren Associates group at a high level of excellence, right?
Absolutely.
The complaints in here, some of them say they didn't get any return phone calls or didn't hear anything. And I know how complaints can be. I have them at my store at times, and there's certain ones you can't do anything about. All I'm doing is making a statement that obviously we expect you to be at a higher level of excellence than some of the boards that are running themselves, because it's what you do full time. And so just know that anyway, that we're paying attention, and we appreciate all that you've done.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're committed to do that.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? You have Representative Shedd.
I want to take this opportunity to remember my good friend, I'm telling my age now, but E.W. Sonny Patton, that helped get this original bill passed to establish this board, from Vinemont, Alabama, in my district.
All right. Thank you.
And for the record, my district too.
All right. Good. If there are no other questions or comments, thank y'all all for being here today.
I do just want to publicly appreciate all of the staff members and all of the cleaning personnel that follow us in this committee, because of all this white paper on the bottom that's falling off. So thank you to the staff that have to clean up after.
Amen. And thank y'all for coming, board members, staff. Thank y'all so much for being here. Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
At first and a second, all in favor say aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank y'all.
all.
Thank you. I bet, just white all over the. Yes.
trying to put down the fires up here for my colleagues. Welcome everyone to our ARPA Oversight Committee. I think, and I may stand corrected on this, but I think this is our actually third meeting of oversight